Hopefully it's gone live by now. Thanks everybody for tuning in. The Deeper Dive presented by Awesemo.com. I'm filling in for Laffy today, and of course, as always, we got Adam, aka Shit My Money Share. Adam, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Excited for a 9-game basketball slate. It's always nice to get the full slates this time of the year when you have so many shorter slates mixed in. So excited for this.
Yeah, man, it's a big change from last night, and of course, the opening night, 3 games last night. We saw, I mean, the Pistons have been aggressively chalked in 2 of the 3 of the first slates of the season, which I thought was pretty interesting. And 2 nights ago, another big slate, we saw all the chalk get there, and the scores were insane. You had to get like 400 points on DraftKings and FanDuel. So do you think this is another spot where maybe there's some good chalk today, or is it a little bit harder to find it?
Yeah, I think it's another really high scoring slate. I think that there are pretty good. There's good chalk. There are some spots that I think maybe are a little bit overhyped. But the thing with NBA that we see consistently this time of the year is that sites, especially DraftKings, but also to some extent FanDuel, tend to really underprice players, and so you just get these really really high scoring slates, which um, I think for players who are better, it's not that ideal because it's just harder for people to make mistakes. But it gets more casuals involved when you can do things like last night when you can fit all of Russell Westbrook, Steph Curry, Drummond, and James Harden into lineups together.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I was like having a roster full of guys that I like instead of maybe going for guys like Wesley Matthews, can't remember who else was chalk last night, but it was ugly at the value end.
Yeah,
Hopefully we'll
DeAndre
find.
Bembry.
Oh man, yeah. Uh, the guy that throws off everyone's Excel sheets because of that random apostrophe. Gotta love
Yeah,
it when.
yeah. Now they have DeAndre Hunter too, so it's just a mess.
All right. Well, let's get into it. We got an hour to break down these 9 games. Should be a good slate here. First game, we got Minnesota at Charlotte. We saw Karl Anthony Towns go out on 2 nights ago on Wednesday and have an amazing game, rivaled only by Andre Drummond. And I mean, there's no Jimmy Butler anymore. No Saric on the Timberwolves. How are you feeling about Towns and the Timberwolves today?
Yeah, another really good spot for the Wolves in general, but Towns in particular. He's basically matchup proof anyway. I mean, he's got close to without Jimmy Butler on the floor last season. He had close to a 20% assist percentage. He has a 20% rebounding percentage, almost a 30% usage rate, averaged over 1.5 DraftKings points per minute. But on top of that, you just get a really favorable matchup here against one of the worst teams in basketball. The Hornets are also missing their starting center in Cody Zeller. So I haven't seen a starting lineup for Charlotte, but that front court's going to be some combination of guys like Bismack Biyombo, Guillermo Hernan Gomez, Marvin Williams, PJ Washington trying to defend Karl Anthony Towns. He's got an athleticism and or size mismatch on every single player that the Hornets could possibly throw at him. It should be a good rebounding spot. It's just another spot that I want to go right back to Towns.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Charlotte backup centers, as you mentioned, Hernan Gomez kind of really weak at defense. Biombo can't stay on the court because he has no offensive game. So it'll be really interesting to see what Charlotte does at center. We'll break it down in a second here. But how are you feeling about Jeff Teague, Wiggins, Covington, the rest of the starters for Minnesota?
Not as I don't like them as much as I do Towns. Obviously, I think that Teague and Covington both played. Well, Teague played about 30 minutes last game, which I expected. Covington played fewer minutes than I expected last game. I don't really know what to make of that, but for right now, I only have him at 30 minutes, which makes him a reasonable option, but not someone that I'm overly excited about. The one thing worth keeping in mind, and I mentioned it before the first game, is that I do expect better rebounding numbers for Covington this year than we've seen in previous years. So he should probably be projected a little bit higher on a per minute basis than we've seen in the past. But I think that there are still some better forward options than him tonight. Wiggins is, basically the same play all the time. He's going to get up a bunch of shots. He's in a good matchup. But we were talking about it a bit in Slack today, and someone was asking why it seems like people are never really that high on Wiggins when he shoots as much as he does. And it's because even in those games where Wiggins goes out there and scores 30 real points, more often than not, you're getting something like 40 fantasy points. And if that's what you're getting when a guy scores 30 actual points, it's just not really worth taking on all those games where he shoots poorly. So again, it's just a kind of secondary option for me in Wiggins.
Yeah, definitely. I think that I mean, the matchup is really the appealing thing for Charlotte. Really, really young team now. Nick Batum is out with a broken bone, I believe, and then Marvin Williams is kind of on the bench. No Kemba Walker. So it should be a really rebuilding team now. And anytime you have a team versus this Charlotte team, I think it'll be a pretty good matchup. So
Yeah.
on Charlotte's side, we saw last game Terry Rozier pretty popular. Signed a huge contract with the Hornets in the offseason, but then he got benched in favor of Devontae Graham. So how are you reading that situation?
Not expecting him to get benched again. It would be pretty surprising if all it took was, a preseason and one game for Terry Rozier to lose the grasp on his starting job. But especially with Batum out too, I think that's potentially just more minutes that he plays alongside Devontae Graham. But the thing is, Rozier should have an opportunity to do well on this team. But if you go back to last year and look at his numbers when he played without, basically, you can take anyone off the court for Boston. He still never really turned into this really high usage guy. He wasn't a high usage guy in the preseason for Charlotte. I think there's at least some concern over whether or not he's going to take control of this opportunity. He's already kind of been preemptively priced up like he's going to. And so it just makes him, I think, kind of a neutral play. One thing working in his favor is that Minnesota was the fastest team in the league in the preseason. We just saw them give up a monster game to Kyrie in the first game of the season against Brooklyn. So, opportunity should be there for Rozier, but the more time he spends on the floor alongside Devontae Graham, I think hurts him. And then also just having a competent backup that can steal some minutes potentially, like we saw last game, makes it so I'm not overly confident in Rozier.
I'm actually feeling pretty good about him. I gotta take a different stance here. I think that one area I'm expecting Rozier to really up his game this year is as far as assists. When he was on Boston, he played with a lot of guys that can spread around the ball, but this starting lineup especially has really low assist rates. Dwayne Bacon 9%, Miles Bridges 8%. I guess he might not be starting, but he plays a lot of minutes. Or
He should be starting.
Oh, he's starting. Okay.
Yeah.
And then PJ Washington, he was about 10% in preseason. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for him to rack up fantasy points in the assist category. So I'm actually looking to him tonight, hoping that people are off him. But then we got Cody Zeller out, as we mentioned. Willie Hernangomez, Biombo, kind of the centers lurking around. How do you expect them to handle the center position?
I expect it to be a mess because I don't think any of them really stay on the floor and match up well with Towns. We also got a tweet from one of the Charlotte writers that although he didn't expect him to start, not to be surprised if Williams soaked up a lot of backup center minutes. So I have it projected to basically be, like 16 to 18 minutes of Biombo, maybe like 12 minutes for Hernangomez, and then Williams to be getting some time there as well. I don't think it's anything that's particularly useful for DFS. Like the best I could say is that if you felt the need to throw a dart in tournaments, like if Biombo actually plays well or something, then he should have an opportunity to get more minutes. But I think there's enough cheap value at the center and power forward positions where I don't need to go there. I think that if I were looking to take a shot on one of the cheap front court guys for the Hornets, I would actually be most interested in Williams, just because I think that I think he's got a better chance of having a big game than either of the other two. But overall, it's just a situation I'm staying away from.
Yeah, I can definitely feel you there because man, it's gonna be so brutal, like seeing how these guys match up with Towns. So I'll go to the ownership projections here, because they're free today, and you can kind of follow along with us. Terry Rozier at 8%, but second on the team at 5.6% is Hernangomez. So, some people are looking to him for value. Do you think he's kind of a bad play though?
I think, yeah. I mean, if we get news he's starting, then I guess the minutes maybe become a little bit more secure. But I'm assuming that Biombo gets the start, and so you're basically getting Hernangomez off the bench for who knows how many minutes. I just think that there's a ton of risk. He's going to get torched by Towns. Like there's the only way that you really get Hernangomez minutes is if Charlotte decides to just take as offensive minded an approach as they can and just ignore the fact that Towns is scoring every time he touches the ball.
Definitely. I think I was kind of surprised Hernangomez didn't get a single minute in the opener, so you definitely don't expect a big role for him, but I might take some stabs. The next game we got probably a lot more competitive. Toronto versus Boston. Got a 3-point spread in favor of the Celtics. And we got a new look for the Celtics. We got Kemba Walker, no Kyrie. And it looks like their rotation may be a little bit more secure this year. Jaylen Brown and Tatum both starting alongside Hayward. No Al Horford and Baynes kind of having that two center starters. How are you projecting the Celtics today?
Yeah, we saw pretty big minutes from most of their main guys against Philadelphia. You got 37 from Tatum, 34 from Kemba, 35 from Hayward, 33 from Smart, and these guys all lost about a minute at the end of the game as well, as it wasn't competitive. So that was pretty nice to see. It's still, I think, spread out production because so many of these guys are competent offensive players, and none of them are really cheap. But I do think there's at least minutes there, so they grade out as reasonable secondary options, not guys that I'm building lineups around. But I think there's enough minutes there that mixing in, Tatum, Hayward, Brown, especially anyone that has small forward eligibility is pretty appealing,
Yeah,
or at
like
least reasonably appealing.
I think they're all good. I really like Brown from a kind of narrative standpoint because he only played 21 minutes in the opener. But some people might not look at the box score. He got 5 fouls, and that's why he was off the
Yep.
court a lot. He actually played 11 minutes in the fourth quarter of those 20, so he makes a nice kind of maybe under the radar spot. And of course, we got Marcus Smart lurking around. He played 33 minutes last game. What are you expecting as far as minutes for him?
Yeah, I have Smart projected for 32 minutes again tonight. I think that there's plenty of guys for him to defend on Toronto. I think that he's just obviously a main rotation piece. It's just that he's not the most productive DFS player. Anytime you're getting 30 to 32 minutes at 4,500, you can make a case for it. But on a 9-game slate where I think there's a ton of underpriced guys, I don't anticipate getting a whole lot of Smart.
Yeah, that's true. There's a huge opportunity cost, especially. I mean, he's not cheap enough to really fit in the studs, and not good enough to really um, be of much value. The other spot we got is that Enes Kanter started game one. He was ruled out for games 2 and 3, I believe. And we got the backup centers being Daniel Theis and Robert Williams. What do you expect Theis to get the start here?
Yeah, I'm expecting Dice to start, but I think that it's a pretty risky situation. I don't really have a good grasp on who plays more minutes here between him and Robert Williams. We've seen Dice play. Neither one of them played more than 11 minutes in the opener. Cantor played 25. I think that Boston can get pretty creative with their front court. They're both cheap enough, Williams and Dice, and both productive enough. Williams averaged 1 fantasy point per minute last year. Dice averaged 0.95. That at their salaries, even if you're projecting like 22 minutes, they're pretty decent point per dollar options. I think that Williams has the higher ceiling just because he offers more block upside, but neither one's someone that I'm super confident in.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's hard to be confident. I mean, their roles are kind of in flux on the team, and they have a little bit of opportunity tonight. So I think if Theis gets off to a good start, he might see some good minutes, maybe the mid 20s. So don't mind him as kind of that dirt minimum bargain bin kind of play. On the other side, we got the Raptors, obviously tough matchup. But we saw in the first game, Pascal Siakam really had a huge one. It really took a leap from last year. His performance, at least in this first game, of course, coming off a really strong campaign in itself. Now he's pretty expensive. Are you willing to go back to the well and hope that he's up to his game to another level this year?
I'm willing to go back there. It is a tough matchup against the Celtics, but the front court is a bit depleted. Obviously, mostly because Horford's gone. Losing Cantor doesn't do anything to hurt the defense, but we expect a big step forward for Siakam this year. He's certainly capable of doing a lot of things on the floor, and now you don't have Kawhi Leonard. In 3 preseason games, Siakam had a 29.3% usage rate. Against the Pels, it was 35%. He played 38 minutes, all in regulation before fouling out. So clearly Toronto willing to play him big minutes. They ran a tight rotation overall last game, but he also rebounds well. He had 18 rebounds against the Pelicans, 24 rebound chances, one of the higher numbers we've seen so far. And he had 7 potential assists as well. So really just contributes in every area. The thing that will keep my overall exposure to him down somewhat, it'll keep him, from being one of my highest owned guys on the slate, is that if you just look at the power forward position on DraftKings, there's not only is there a lot of value at the position, more so than most other positions, but there's also a lot of similarly projected guys around Siakam. So that'll keep my exposure in check. On FanDuel, though, he's an $8,800 small forward. I think that makes him really valuable. He's the second most expensive player at the position, but there's about a $2,500 gap between him and LeBron. So you can get a really, really productive player at a weak position and a nice price tag with Siakam at small forward there.
Absolutely. We got yeah, Siakam, I think, should be in a really good spot with Kawhi out. That's just more shots he can take, more boards. I think that it's reasonable the price tag he's at. We got Lowry, a guy who really excelled when Kawhi Leonard was out last year. He's not expensive in DFS yet. He's 7K on DraftKings, 7,600 on FanDuel. How are you feeling about Lowry?
Yeah, I think Lowry's a secondary point guard option for me. There's guys at the position I like a little bit more. At the same price range, I prefer Chris Paul, but you should get big minutes out of Lowry. It's just not a great matchup against Boston. They obviously have plenty of good defenders on that team, but he should be productive. He should play 35, 36 minutes. And like you said, he's still pretty inexpensive.
Yeah, definitely. I'm expecting him to be a pretty nice fantasy player this year. And finally, we got the center rotation. Marcus Gasol and Serge Ibaka. They actually shared the court a decent amount in the first game, which kind of gives some hope that maybe they'll go back to playing bigger minutes this season now that they have an off season to prepare. Of course, Gasol being traded to the team mid-season. So, what are you maybe going to Gasol or Ibaka here?
Yeah, I think the rotation, like you said, was really friendly for them because he gives them both the chance to play more minutes. The issue is that I still don't think either one gets huge minutes. Like I have Gasol at 27 minutes right now. I have Ibaka at 26. And because they are center and or power forward eligible, there's a lot of guys at the top that I really like, and there's a lot of value at the position. So the opportunity cost to go to these guys in the mid range when it's really difficult to envision them getting 33 or 34 minutes is pretty tough. Gasol also looked just absolutely awful against uh, whoever he played. I'm drawing a blank. But he looked against the Pelicans, looked absolutely awful in that game, just from an overall playing standpoint. Not that that factors in too much, but it's one more reason, just I think, to not really be on him on a slate where I think it's tough to get to him.
Yeah, I might take some shots here. I'm not feeling confident about it either, but he's 5,300 on DraftKings. I mean, this is a guy who we saw in the postseason, really relied on as kind of the go-to center between him and Ibaka. His usage went down significantly going to the Raptors, but maybe with no Kawhi, be up again a little bit. We get some decent assists for position, so I don't hate it. But yeah, I definitely think that the opportunity cost. I mean, 9 games, so we got so many great players to choose from. I might sprinkle them in. The Knicks kind of fooled us all with their starting lineup the other day. They started Alonzo Trier at point guard, who ended up playing 6 minutes. So if you made a late swap and got Trier because you got the news he was starting, it didn't work out so well. But we also have some interesting spots because Mitchell Robinson is coming back from injury. We had Bobby Portis start in his place last game. Probably going back to the bench now. And maybe we see Alfred Payton or Dennis Smith start this game. What are you thinking?
Yeah, it took literally one game for Fizdale to screw up his rotation, and I expect plenty of that this season. He did say we haven't gotten a Knicks lineup yet. He did say that he thinks he would have started Portis even if Robinson were healthy. If that's the case and Portis starts, it's really difficult for me to do anything other than basically split the minutes between them, like 24 apiece. And Robinson still gives you a ceiling in that many minutes because he has so much block upside. But it's just, again, it's tough for me to take on the opportunity cost at center if I don't think someone's playing a ton of minutes. If Robinson gets the start, maybe you can increase his minutes projection by a few minutes and he becomes a little bit more appealing. But it's if he's coming off the bench, I think it's going to be tough. Elfrid Payton, I think, is interesting. He started the second half of that game. He played 19 minutes in the second half. Obviously, I don't expect him to play 40 minutes tonight, but Fizdale did kind of insinuate after that game that Payton could be the starting point guard now. So I'm expecting him to get the start tonight. I have him projected for about 30 minutes, 4,600 on DraftKings and 5,700 on FanDuel. I think it's an interesting tournament play. You just can't really trust him anywhere else because it's the Knicks, and there are so many guys that can rotate through. And Fizdale has no issue being inconsistent with his rotation.
It's a great point. I mean, Alfred Payton played 18 second half minutes. If you extrapolate that to average just based on that second half, it'd probably be 30 minutes a game. Of course, we don't know the rotation. We know the rotation isn't that consistent, so probably GBP play there, but pretty good points per dollar based on those assumptions we're making. And then finally, we got Julius Randle and Marcus Morris, both played a ton of minutes. But do you think that now that Mitchell Robinson is back, maybe their minutes will go down a little bit?
I don't expect Robinson to have a big impact on them because I just expect it to be like Portis and Robinson at center. Um, but it's possible. I think that Randall is probably one of the safest guys out of the Knicks, just because it's really hard to see how he like loses minutes, and he does have such a big role offensively, whether it's as a facilitator or a scorer. And then obviously he grabs rebounds as well. So Randall's my favorite guy on the team just because I trust him the most. Marcus Morris played 39 minutes. I have him projected for 34 here. It's just hard to imagine him playing, averaging 38, 39 minutes a night. But he is still pretty inexpensive, so I think he's a guy that you could get to. But Randall is the guy that I feel most confident in. You're muted.
Thanks, man. Now that he's got this new home in New York, I think maybe he'll be the go-to guy, so that makes some sense to me. I do expect Randall and Morris's minutes to go down a little bit because I believe that Randall played a bit at center last game, and they started all three of the guys. So if the rotation is a little bit shorter, I'm expecting all their minutes to be pinched. Of course, that might mean going from 38 to 30, so that's still a nice spot. And they're facing the Nets, who of course picked up Kyrie Irving in the offseason. He went out and just had a huge game to start the year. Uh, scored like 50 points, I believe, and he basically won the slate for people. Now his price is up a little bit, 9K on DraftKings, 9,700 on FanDuel. So is this a go back to the well or just fade for better spots?
I think it's a good spot. Like I'm perfectly fine going back to it. He's obviously a really, really good player. We don't expect the Knicks to be all that good defensively. But if you're looking for reasons to stay away, like he's probably going to have higher ownership just because of that game. And while he played 38 minutes, 5 of those minutes were in overtime. The projection by most people going into that game was that he was going to play 33 minutes. That's what he played in regulation. And with there being so many guards at a similar price point, those few minutes can be valuable. So, there's no question that he projects as a really good option. He has a really, really high ceiling. It's just that you can kind of play the ownership game with how many similarly priced guys there are that have the same ceiling or about the same ceiling. You can definitely pay attention to ownership. And right now on DraftKings we have Kyrie as the ninth highest owned player on the entire slate. So I think that you could certainly just kind of, if you wanted to, it's fine to just come in a little below him and give more to some other guys.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as a good strategy. Of course, maybe these salaries got pumped up a bit because of that overtime game where they put up the points. One situation I'm kind of looking for that's interesting is DeAndre Jordan is now the backup center in Brooklyn, and he didn't play many minutes in game one, but he's a pretty good fantasy contributor when he's on the court. Do you think that there's any potential there that this season?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's obviously risky. He didn't play much at all in the first game. He only played, I think it was like 14 or 16 minutes. But we did see a true split at center like we expected between Jared Allen and DeAndre Jordan playing every minute at the position. There's certainly going to be games this season where Jared Allen plays less than 31 or 32 minutes, and those minutes are going to go to DeAndre Jordan. At 4,400 with no ownership, he's the kind of guy where if he does only get like 16 minutes, it's not the end of the world because he still can be productive enough to not kill you. But if Allen gets in foul trouble or just doesn't play well or whatever happens, and you happen to get like a 24-minute game out of Jordan, that's like a slate breaking play. So it's not someone that I want tons of my money invested in, but it is the kind of tournament play that I look to make because I think that the ceiling is so high at low ownership.
I like it, man. I think that last year Jared Allen's minutes kind of fluctuated a lot, and Ed Davis was kind of a good fantasy play on a lot of days, and we may see that with Jordan this year. So I think that play has some good merit to it. We got the Bulls versus Memphis. The Bulls projected to take a little bit of a step forward this year. Of course, last year, really bad health and tanking led them to have a terrible season. Memphis, on the other hand, is really tanking now. They got a few young guys starting with Morant. Of course, Jaren Jackson was a great player last year. But one thing I've heard is that their pace this year has just been up a ton, given that they switched from Conley to Morant. So do you think there's more fantasy potential here than maybe people expect?
Yeah, I think so on both sides. The issue with the Memphis players is that outside of Jackson, Morant, and then depending on his minutes restriction, Valanciunas, there's not a lot of really productive per minute players on this team, and there are a lot of interchangeable pieces. So it's really tough to be confident in minutes projections. And more often than not, I think you're just going to see pretty flat rotations. But for guys like Jackson and Morant who do offer really strong per minute upside, I think that they're reasonable tournament options. They're not the most appealing price tags, especially right now while the top tier of players is so underpriced. But they're guys that I'll be interested in as the season goes along.
Yeah, we saw Morant's minutes really get pinched last game compared to the expectation because the second unit really performed well. I'm kind of projecting that maybe it goes back to the hot hand here. So if they get off to a good start, then the starters will stay on. It's projected to be a pretty even matchup here versus the Bulls. The Bulls brought in Tomas Satoransky in the offseason. I don't think he played that big minutes in the first game because they also have Chris Dunn in the rotation at point guard. But I'm mentioning it because Satoransky is only 4,300 on FanDuel. Guy who we saw be a pretty useful fantasy asset last year for the Wizards. Do you think that maybe he's a good value play?
Yeah, I think that there's risk in his minutes because, like you said, you have Dunn, you have Arcidiacono, who also picked up 11 minutes in that game. So there's going to be games where he doesn't close, like we saw against the Bulls. He played the last 2 minutes and 16 seconds of the game against the Hornets, rather. But other than that, he didn't play in the fourth quarter. So there's going to be games where his minutes come down. But he is the best player out of Dunn and Arcidiacono. So I think more often than not, you're going to get 28 to 30 minutes from Satoransky. And he's not the most productive player. He's playing alongside Zach LaVine. LaVine's going to dominate the ball. LaVine is going to get up a lot of shots, but also take some assists from Satoransky. And then you also have, a high usage guy in Lauri Markkanen. So not the best fantasy spot, but certainly the kind of guy that if his price tag is going to hit a basement like at 4,300 on FanDuel, that you can go to.
Yeah, I kind of like him. The number on my site isn't a stat, but it's his paycheck, 10 million a year. And I think that you don't pay someone 10 million a year to play him 24 minutes a game. So we'll see if those minutes pick up. If they do, maybe he'll be in play. I'm also seeing Markkanen just got his price increased a ton because of his hot game. Are you going to be fading him kind of as a price play here?
Not intentionally. Like I think that, so the thing is, it's the same as I said with Randall and with Siakam. It's just that you have all of those guys in the same price range. You also have Kristaps Porzingis, who we'll talk about. So I think it's just a pretty stacked position in that price range. I don't think Markkanen is really any better than the rest of those guys. So I expect my exposure to be pretty spread out across them. But I do like the spot for Markkanen. He wasn't very good offensively in the preseason, only had a 21% usage rate, but last season had a usage percentage up over 25%, rebounded to get a bunch of shots in that first game. And we saw last year his rebounding numbers really skyrocket once Bobby Portis and Jabari Parker left as well. Had another good rebounding game in his first game out. He had he had 21 rebound chances in 34.4 minutes in that first game. That's a ton of rebounding opportunities, and it just gives him an even higher floor, gives him an even higher ceiling. So I do still like Markkanen.
Yeah, I think that I might take a wait and see approach. If he really, really steps up his game, he might be an 8K player, but there's so many mass feed with Porter, with LaVine, that I'm not really landing on too many Bulls tonight. The next game should be a little bit better for fantasy, I think. We got Dallas versus New Orleans. Dallas, of course. You just mentioned Porzingis, so I'll just start there. I mean, he played about 30 minutes last game, and that's probably where he'll be out again tonight. And yeah, I mean, a great fantasy player. So I think that as price point 7,600 on DraftKings and 8,500, that's probably one of the lower price points we'll see this season. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. And I think you could see a couple more minutes from him as well. Dallas said before that game that he was going to play low to mid 30s at most, which obviously there's a million different ways to read that. but I took it as meaning he can play north of 30 minutes. And the game against the Wizards wasn't really that competitive. Most of the fourth quarter, the game was in hand. So I think there's a decent chance that even though he played in the fourth quarter, that if it had been a competitive game, he would have played a bit more. You get a huge pace up game against the Pelicans here, an undersized front court as well. I mentioned in the deep dive article today, you're going to see a combination mostly of Brandon Ingram, Nicola Melli, and Kenrich Williams at the four opposing Porzingis. Ingram and Melli are both 6'9". Williams is 6'7". Porzingis is 7'3". So he's gonna be getting just wide open looks as far as nobody defending his shot. He hopefully can grab some extra rebounds because of the pace and because of potentially inefficient shooting from the Pelicans. He's never been a great rebounding guy in terms of rebounding percentage going back to his times with the Knicks. He didn't get a lot of opportunities in the Wizards game either, but hopefully that's something that picks up. And as you mentioned, this is probably like the lowest price point you see on Porzingis this year.
I like it. I also see the prices across the board are pretty low for these Mavs. Luka Doncic is the most expensive at 9,200 on DraftKings, 10K on FanDuel. Is that a price point you're interested in, or is that too much?
Yeah, he's one of my favorite plays on the slate. His first game against the Wizards, I thought he was a really good play, but it was just kind of tough to get to him because you had a lot of really, really good guards that were like $1,000 or $2,000 less expensive. That's not the case tonight, as the price has come up on a lot of the other guards, and it's actually gone down or stayed the same on Luka. Averaged 1.26 DraftKings points per minute last year, had a 30.9% usage rate, also a 13% rebounding percentage, and a 31% assist percentage. He, against Washington, had a 36.8% usage rate this year. He had the fifth highest usage rate of any regular rotation player in the preseason across the league. And then he also led the team with 9 potential assists against Washington, was tied for the lead with 13 rebound chances. He's just going to do everything. It's a pace up spot. Porzingis should open things up for him a bit more as well. Doncic is one of my favorite plays on the slate across any position.
Man, you're kind of talking me into him here, but I'm a little bit. I think the price point is pretty fair. I mean, with Porzingis sharing the floor with him this year, Porzingis is a pretty high usage guy, so maybe that's a few less shots. But then, of course, I mean, Doncic maybe is taking up his game another level the sophomore season. I don't see it really borne out in any preseason stats so far, but we'll see. One guy I'm kind of looking at is a dirt cheap play. Uh, he's getting paid $18 million this year to play about 20 minutes. We got Tim Hardaway Jr. Off the bench. He was the guy that joined the team kind of mid-year last year, I believe, and his minutes were kind of really wild across the board. What are you kind of projecting for him this season?
Yeah, I think like 22 to 24 minutes is probably where he most often comes in.
I don't hate him at 3,500 then on DraftKings. I mean, if he's playing really well, he'll certainly see more than 22. So I think that could be a good GPP play. And this game, I mean, there's just so many options. We got Delon Wright, pretty cheap for a starter, 4,800 DraftKings, 5,400 FanDuel, new to the team this year, I believe. I mean, you can't love him starting alongside Doncic, a really high usage, high assist guy. But what are you thinking for Wright?
Yeah, I think that he's probably my least, well, outside of Courtney Lee, he's my least favorite of the Dallas starters. But you can make a case for like any cheap guy going against the Pels because they just play so fast. DeLon Wright, we know, is a capable producer. He only played 22 minutes against the Wizards, but he didn't play at all in the second or in the fourth quarter. For comparison, in the second quarter, he played about 5 minutes. If you were to give him 26, 27 minutes today, I think it makes him like a borderline value option. But I just think that there are still some better guys I'd rather get to.
Nice, man. Yeah, not really standing out in price or value, I guess. And then finally, a guy who's popular last slate, we got Maxi Kleber. His work should be pretty solid as long as Dwight Powell's out. 3,700 on DraftKings, 4,400 FanDuel. Is that a value play you're looking to today?
Yeah, I really like going back to Kleber here. He was popular last slate, like you said, didn't come through, but dealt with some foul trouble. I actually kind of overlooked him when I was writing the article today because he just didn't pop up in my early stuff before I adjusted it. But he played against the Wizards. He played 23.6 minutes, but he missed the last 4.5 minutes of the second quarter after picking up his third foul. So I think that you pretty easily could see more minutes for him here. Again, just a pace up spot. He's capable of doing a lot of things on the floor, rebounding and scoring a bit. So I think that he's a really strong value.
Nice. Yeah, I think that of all the guys at that price point, I mean, he's got to have the most secure role, kind of being locked in as a starter.
And you
But
should
maybe,
also see his ownership come down because in addition to, just burning people last game, you have at that same price point and position, you have the guys from the Kings and Holmes and Bielitsa that, I think will be more popular. And then you also have the Boston front court that I think people will go to.
for sure, yeah. And some of those dudes who aren't afraid to take a shot on Hernan Gomez.
Yeah, that too.
On the other side, Alonzo Ball didn't play a ton of minutes in the Pelicans season opener. Favors also kind of was disappointing. They really didn't give anyone a lot of minutes aside from Drew Holiday and Brandon Ingram. So is that what you're expecting again today?
It's really tough to tell because that rotation was just so absurd that you can't expect it to be the regular thing. But at the same time, it was the first game of the season, and if it's not like guys were like needed rest or anything. So I think it's just an unpredictable situation because this team has so many guys that are capable of being in the rotation. They played 12 guys against Toronto, and I think that the only guy that you would argue like shouldn't be in a normal rotation is Frank Jackson. So, out of everyone else, it's pretty easy to make a case for why they're on the floor. That being said, though, you did see the second unit get more playing time than I would expect because they just played pretty well. Josh Hart in particular, played a ton of minutes over Alonzo. Alvin Gentry said that was just kind of a game flow thing, that the second unit was playing well and he just didn't really want to go back to the starters. But that, Lonzo is still the guy there. So I think that the rotation will be different than it was against Toronto. I just don't think you can be that confident in anyone's minutes outside of like Drew and probably Ingram.
I kind of like Drew. It might be a too many cooks in the kitchen situation. Him and Ball kind of competing for the assists and ball handling. But I think that he makes a nice play at his price point in a pace game.
Yeah, one thing that stood out last game for me too, obviously he disappointed, but he led the team with 16 potential assists. Ball and Ingram were next with 6. Only 6 of those potential assists were converted, which obviously is part of the reason that Holiday's stat line was so low. But we have a pretty nice sample last year of him playing without Davis and being a high usage guy. It's obviously an entirely different team this year, but there's nobody that came in that is going to absorb the usage that Davis got. So I still expect, upper 20s usage for Holiday. I still expect him to have the ball a decent amount, even though he's playing alongside Lonzo. I think that it's a pretty nice bounce back spot for him because he's not a great point per dollar value, but he still has that 50 plus fantasy point upside.
I like it. I think that Drew makes a nice play. A point guard who might not be as appealing is in the next game. We got Ish Smith facing off against the Thunder. Last game, he was aggressively chalky because, they just didn't have a lot of depth at the point guard position. But this game, I believe Isaiah Thomas is supposed to be back, and he's out. Oh, okay, thanks.
Or tomorrow potentially.
Okay. Well, thanks for the update because I was about to go off the deep end here on the deeper dive. But so does that mean Ish Smith again, kind of going back to the well?
I think that you can look at it a couple of ways. For one, he only played about 24 minutes last game, but I have him projected for 32 today. He lost minutes in the second half of a non-competitive game to a bench unit that got hot. But also a piece of injury news that I think is just going to go completely overlooked is that Jordan McRae has a broken finger, and he played a bunch of minutes off the bench. So I think that helps solidify Ish Smith's minutes. The problem is that he's still not really cheap for a guy who's not a high usage player. And last year, even if you look at his numbers with the Pistons, if you put Blake Griffin on the floor to, kind of be a proxy for Bradley Beal as far as someone that has the ball a lot, Ish only had a 20% assist percentage. He's just never been a really high per minute producer. And I expect Beal to still be the de facto point guard on this team. Beal had a ton of potential assists in the last game. And so I think that even when he's on the floor, Smith isn't going to be a great fantasy contributor. So it still doesn't make him a guy that I really love tonight.
That's tough to hear, man, because I was rooting for Ish Smith in this new look team, at least until John Wall gets back. But I will note that in the preseason, he had a 31% assist percentage, which is actually pretty high. and he's a guy that really can't do much without the ball in his hands. So I think that it could impact Beal's kind of assists the most. Bonga, really popular last game. He's super cheap. He played about 24 minutes or 22 minutes or something. Is that someone you're interested in?
No, not at all. In the preseason, I think Bonga played in 4 games. He had about a 10% usage rate. He had about a 10.5% usage rate in the first game. He's never really been a really productive guy, and he was directly backed up by Davis Bertans, who adds a lot more to this Washington team than Bonga does, because Bertans is a knockdown 3-point shooter, and Washington needs the spacing. So I just, for one, have a hard time seeing Bonga play a ton of minutes, and for two, even if he does, I'm not sure that I care.
Fair enough, man. Just want to throw it out there in case anyone was wondering what happened when they had Bonga at 30% last game.
Yeah, I think Bertans is actually a decent tournament punt, though.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that in San Antonio really saw minutes fluctuating, but maybe he'll find a new role on the Wizards. On the other side, we got Chris Paul replacing Westbrook in this OKC offense. I was pretty big on him last game. It was a tough matchup versus Utah, but I'm expecting his numbers to go up per minute now that he's not playing alongside Harden. And now against Washington, that's a better matchup for sure. Is that someone you're interested in tonight?
Yeah, definitely. I think he's one of the better point per dollar options at this position. We saw a lot of the guys get their prices jacked up a bit after Wednesday's slate, but Paul's still sitting there at 7,200 on DraftKings. He's 8,400 on FanDuel, which I think is fine as well. The knock against him would be that he's probably only going to play 30, maybe 32 minutes, but it is a good matchup. And if you go back and look at his time with the Clippers, before he joined Houston, and he was more of the guy. He had a 24.5% usage rate. That's about what we saw out of him in Oklahoma City's first game. He's obviously going to have the ball in his hands a lot. And I think that at the very least, he's, a solid floor, good point per dollar option. If he's going to get a lot of ownership, maybe doesn't have quite the ceiling that guys like Kyrie and, Doncic have for more money. But I think he's a really strong value.
Nice. Kind of looking at the injury news here, we got some stuff coming through the pipeline. It looks like games we haven't covered that much yet, so we'll get to those. One guy I got burned by was Dennis Schroeder. He ended up playing like 30-something minutes off the bench, surprisingly, even though he wasn't starting. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander played a ton of minutes. Do you expect Schroeder to be viable in fantasy off the bench?
I think it's a really interesting situation between him and Gilgeous-Alexander. Basically, all of the backcourt minutes were split between Paul, Gilgeous-Alexander, and Schroeder last game. But if you look at Schroeder's numbers in the preseason and his numbers in that first game, it looks like he's taking on a much bigger facilitating role at the expense of shooting. He had a sub 20% usage rate in the preseason. He had a 13.3% usage rate in that first game. But he had a lot of potential assists. He had a high assist percentage in the preseason. So I think that the minutes will be there. I think that his price tag's cheap enough that he's a reasonable option. But the other side of that, what really stands out to me is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who isn't at a particularly appealing price tag. But he did play monster minutes last game. I have him at 36 minutes tonight. It's obviously a good matchup. In the preseason, his usage rate was a little over 28%. In the first game of the year, he was at 32.5%. It looks like his assist numbers are coming down at the expense of more scoring, and then Schroeder's taking on more of the playmaking role as the backup, point guard. So I think that probably not much ownership on Gilgeous-Alexander, but I think he's interesting in tournaments.
Nice. I think that could be an interesting spot to watch just because he's getting so many minutes. Kind of a player that could take a jump forward this year. Some news we just got: Rondae Hollis-Jefferson out for the Raptors. Obviously, didn't play the last game. What do you think that moves the needle at all for any of these Raptors?
No, I don't think so. I had him getting like a handful of minutes just because I didn't really have anywhere else to put them. Now I'll just give them to someone else off the bench. Basically, the only minutes I had to Hollis Jefferson were just so that I wasn't projecting like 42 minutes for Siakam or something.
Yeah, actually, I think it benefits Gasol and Ibaka because if RHJ played, he would play at power forward, which is obviously the position you want them both playing on the same court at the same time. So maybe Ibaka could be worth a shot. I like Gasol already. Going on to the next game here, we got Phoenix at Denver. Phoenix, I believe, has some had DeAndre Ayton was ruled out for 25 games due to suspension. So we got Aron Baynes starting. Frank Kaminsky, maybe Check Diallo or backing him up. What's your take on this center rotation?
Yeah, so we have Baynes starting. Obviously, they would like him to stay out there for defensive reasons against Jokic. It's going to be an absolute nightmare if it has to be Kaminsky or Diallo. So I think Baynes should play, really as many minutes as he can handle. I have him in for 27 right now. Only 3,200. The problem, the reason that I think I'll get less of Baynes than some other value is that he's only center eligible, whereas the guys on the Kings are power forward eligible. The guys on Boston are power forward eligible. And obviously, there's just a lot of opportunity cost at the center position. So that will keep it down a little bit, but still a good point per dollar value. Only 3,200 on DraftKings, and should be reasonably productive.
Yeah, I think he's good chalk. That's someone that we saw kind of step up for the Celtics whenever he started, get some good minutes. A couple guys worth mentioning: Rubio, Booker, Oubre. None of them are really standing out to me as far as price and the matchup versus Denver. I mean, a tougher team. Are you going to any of those guys?
No, they're not standing out to me either. Really tough matchup going into Denver. Just a really deep team, good defensive team, and none of these guys, like you said, are really favorably priced. Like Rubio is reasonably cheap, but there's point guards that I think are better point per dollar options. Booker obviously has a monster ceiling, but I would rather roster any of Bradley Beal, Drew Holiday, Luka Doncic at similar price points.
Nice. Denver on the other side, a really nice matchup versus Phoenix. Nikola Jokic is going to be super chalky today. So I'll start there. How are you feeling about Jokic?
Good. I mean, I think he's good chalk here. I think he's only 9,300 on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he is 10,800. Second highest or second most expensive center there. But I think both are reasonable price points. He only played 24 minutes in the first game because he picked up 3 fouls in the first 3 minutes and 45 seconds of the game, and then spent the rest of the first half on the bench. But still had a productive game with, I think it was 20 points and 13 rebounds in his 24 minutes. Last season had the highest usage rate, highest assist percentage, and highest rebounding percentage on Denver. It's a really, really good matchup here against Phoenix. I see no reason not to be rostering Jokic.
I like it. I'm only gloss over some of these guys, but I'll throw out that the other Denver starters are probably worth sprinkling in. But are any standing out in particular?
Not really. I think Jokic is the main one. I agree that you can sprinkle them in because it is a good matchup and they are reasonably cheap. But there's nobody that looks quite as appealing to me as Jokic does.
Yeah, agreed. Portland versus Sacramento. Portland projected for 114 points. We saw Zach Callens go out and play 30 minutes, as we kind of expected. And then Rodney Hood played a ton of minutes. Those are the guys that are really standing out for me. Do you think they're going to continue seeing 30 plus?
Yeah, I think so. Especially while Nurkic is out in the case of Collins, you should get him starting alongside Whiteside and then backing him up as well. He closed the game over Whiteside, so I think the minutes are pretty steady for him. Pretty decent matchup against Sacramento, reasonable price tag. Not a core play for me, but someone that I'm not upset if I get to some of him, especially where you can roster him at power forward. Rodney Hood, the minutes I think will be there. Who knows what he does with them? He's kind of been that way his entire career. He's cheap enough where if you're playing 150 lineups, you can take a shot at him. But if you're playing like 3 maxes or single entry, I think there's a lot of players in that price range that I feel a lot better about than Hood.
Yeah, I agree. I think that 3,800 is a really nice price point, but Kent Bazemore backing him up as well as some Hazonia. I think that those guys could potentially get the run if they're playing well. So I'm not projecting him to see a ton of minutes. I'll probably just stick to 30 as my average. On the other side, we have some big chalk. I mean, Marvin Bagley's out, Harry Giles out. So we got Dwayne Dedman and Rashawn Holmes at center. And then Bielitsa starting for Bagley. All these guys are going to be popular. They're cheap. Are you liking anyone in particular?
Yeah, I mean, if these guys were like 4,200 or something, like Bielitsa and especially Holmes, I would find it easier to get away. I think that they're probably being overprojected a little bit, but they're just so cheap that it's still really, really tough not to like them. Holmes in particular, only 3,400 on DraftKings with power forward center eligibility, didn't play any minutes alongside Dedman last game. So I think that there's a pretty good chance that you're still only seeing like 20, 22 minutes from Holmes, but he's still a greater than 1 fantasy point per minute guy. at basically the minimum salary, playing 20, 22 minutes. So he's still a good option. Bielitsa is getting the start in place of Bagley. He averaged 0.95 DraftKings points per minute last year. If you get around 26 minutes from him, that's obviously good value at his price as well. So both of those guys, even though they are chalk, I think that they are pretty good chalk, especially just because of how cheap they are. Dwayne Dedman only played 14 minutes last game, but um, obviously missing Bagley, even though they don't play the same position, is one more front court guy not out there. So I think that at 4,100, he's another guy you could look to. But the same thing that I said with Baynes, why I don't like him quite as much as guys like Bielitsa and Holmes, is that if you roster Dedman as your value, you can't get on FanDuel, you can't get to either of Jokic or Towns. On DraftKings, it means that you can't get to at least one of them. Whereas if you're going to guys with power forward eligibility, you can still get those lineups that have Jokic plus Towns.
That's a great point. So the opportunity cost of Bielitsa lower than Dedman for sure. I'm kind of curious to see what happens here. I mean, they got Ariza in the lurking around who can play power forward. Maybe if he's playing well, take some Bielitsa minutes. Also, Caleb Swanigan, maybe he joins the rotation. So I think there's definitely ways for these guys to fail, but they are way too cheap. So that makes them pretty appealing.
The thing for me is, like, I think if they fail, they're still giving you like 7x. And it's not great, but it's like not the end of the world either.
Yeah, I'll take 7x. Let's lock that in. The last game of the night, and then we got live before lock with Josh. All right, so we got the Lakers versus Utah. Utah, they brought in Mike Conley. We actually just got some injury information on the Utah Jazz that could be relevant. Is that Bojan Bogdanovic is out for the game. He started the last game, I believe. Do you think that means that Joe Ingles is going to rejoin the starting lineup?
Most likely, yes.
I think that makes a pretty nice play if that comes true, because he's only 4,600 on DraftKings, 5,100 of FanDuel. They definitely priced him to be a bench guy.
Yeah, still played 32 minutes last game too.
Yeah. And then we got Jeff Green kind of lurking around. Maybe he picks some extra minutes up. Who do you think really takes these 28 minutes that maybe Bojan would be projected for?
Yeah, I think Green picks up more. He played 16 and a half minutes last game. But, Ingles now, I think, probably does get the start. And you got 24 minutes from Bogdanovic. So with Ingles already playing 32.7 minutes last game, he's not picking up that many of Bogdanovic's minutes. So I think maybe you get, 22, 24 out of Jeff Green. Royce O'Neal played 30 last game, but could potentially pick up another couple of minutes. And then, Nang could pick up a bit as well.
Nice. I think that could be pretty appealing, especially for Ingles, who's kind of really cheap. But are you also looking at Royce O'Neal as an option in DFS?
I don't think so, just because there's so much value in that price range already. And he's a guy that really doesn't do a whole lot with his minutes unless it's a situation where like Donovan Mitchell is out and or Mike Conley is out. He is a much better real life player than DFS player. So on a slate that I don't think is really starving for value, I don't see getting there.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. On the other side, the Lakers, kind of surprising last game, the rotation they went with. I was kind of projecting my boy Alex Caruso to pick up some minutes, but
yeah, I was too.
Yeah, and then Rondo didn't play. I think he's questionable again. Probably not moving the needle for any of these guys, but we got LeBron and Anthony Davis. I mean, those are some of the highest projected guys of the slate. How are you handling them today?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of slate dependent or site dependent. On DraftKings, they're both at some of their cheapest salaries you'll see all year. Davis at 10K, LeBron at 9,500. Obviously, both really good plays, even though the obvious concerns are, for one, this game probably isn't going to be very fast paced. The Lakers aren't playing particularly fast. The Jazz don't play fast. Jazz are good defensively. But with those salaries, it just really doesn't matter all that much. You're still going to get 36, 37 minutes out of Davis and LeBron. They are two of the best point per minute guys in the NBA. On FanDuel, it's a little bit more interesting because you have Davis priced all the way up to $12,000 at power forward. And as we've mentioned several times throughout the show, power forward's a pretty good position with, Randall, Porzingis, Markkanen, PJ Washington, who we didn't even mention against Minnesota, but just a lot of power forward options that are viable. where, you could save some money off of Davis. Whereas at the small forward position, you have LeBron at the top, you have Siakam as a good play, but then it dies off really, really quickly. So I think that on FanDuel, LeBron is a significantly better play than Davis is.
Nice. They're priced up quite high, 11.2 on for LeBron, 12K for Davis. Do you guys think, or do you think these guys take a hit in production playing next to each other?
I don't think that they take a hit next to each other. One thing that did concern me in the first game, well, for one, Anthony Davis had a career high in post-up possessions, which isn't really what you want to see. You'd rather see him out there, in pick and roll, which we didn't see at all. But also, if Rondo's out again, there just isn't really a secondary ball handler on that second unit that really, again, they just weren't running pick and roll with Davis. You saw a lot of just kind of passing the ball around the perimeter and then dumping it into Davis and him posting up. So for one, that slows the Lakers down. But for two, it's just less efficient offense for Davis. So again, I think that at their salaries, it's still fine. But I think that there's still some things to be worked out between the two of them and that you'll get better per minute production as the season goes on.
Yeah, it'll definitely be exciting to watch these guys together and kind of learn the system because we saw, I mean, whenever LeBron kind of forms his power teams, it takes a little bit of time to gel. So, excuse my narrative-based analysis there. So any final thoughts on tonight's slate?
I don't think so. I think it's pretty wide open. There's some pretty good value, but there's enough of it that you shouldn't be getting any like 60% on guys or anything like that. So I think it's a pretty good one.
Yeah, definitely. I think that you can access our ownership projections for free today, and what I noticed right off the bat, there isn't anyone that's really like aggressive chalk. I mean, the highest projected ownership this morning was around 20. Now it's 35 because of some of the injury news. So I think you can really kind of go to your favorite plays today and not worry too much about ownership. So just to wrap up, we got this show is sponsored by Yahoo, so I got working my plug. I mean, Yahoo, great place because they have such a big base of season-long players that transition to DFS, and I think that these guys, while they're kind of the kings of their leagues that they play with their friends, we really like break down DFS to a higher level than season long, and you can get a huge edge on these guys. Yahoo recently added CSV upload and CSV edit so that you can enter the baller and then change your lineups without too much time left, and that's crucial for NBA where you have to edit all your guys at the last minute sometimes. And make sure to stay tuned on the same stream here for Live Before Lock with Josh and Chris. And thanks everyone for watching.
right. What's up, guys? Welcome to Live Before Lock here for the Awesemo YouTube channel, awesemo.com, the whole Awesemo enterprise we have, of course, founded by the boss man, Alex Baker. I'm Chris Spags, joined by my pal, the chubster, Josh Engelman. How you doing, Josh?
I am quite good because this is a basketball Live Before Lock, and I'm really excited to talk about basketball.
You don't enjoy our Sunday church sessions doing the NFL Live Before Lock?
I mean, I love it. I just love it in a different way.
It's true that we are capable of different kinds of love, but you know what? There is always a room in my heart for rake-free DFS, and thanks to FantasyDraft.com, we do have that in our lives now, so we don't have to go swiping right for love of rake-free DFS. No, we have it right at our fingertips. All you have to do is right now go to FantasyDraft.com, use the promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. You get your free 7-day trial into the world of rake-free DFS. A lot of big tournaments for basketball. The Hooters main event, still their big one for the NFL. But a lot of great stuff going over there. So go check out FantasyDraft.com. Josh, I presume you're playing there because you are a man who does enjoy not paying rake whenever you can.
I have not yet been able to set up my sheet for Fantasy Draft. I would like to. I'm at one site for right now, which is FanDuel, but Fantasy Draft is my spot for the NFL. I will absolutely be there in the $25 or I guess it's 28 now, but the Hooters the Hooters contest, the Hooters main event, that's my spot every weekend, so I'm there.
Yeah, you know, I believe in supporting the Hooters enterprise as best we can, but of course FantasyDraft.com even more important, so go check them out right now. FantasyDraft.com, use that promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, get your 7-day trial, and also go to awesemo.com/join and get your half month off, a free half month. Let's say it like that. Free half month if you use the promo code Live Before Lock at awesemo.com/join. All the data we're going to talk about, all the ownership projections and projections, which are from Awesemo himself this year. I know, Josh, you must be crestfallen to not have to share your data with the world now, but Alex is out there. So are you have to adjust this now? Because I feel like you probably have a little more of an edge now that your projections aren't out there. And you can also use Alex's.
Oh, I'm just happy that I'm not responsible for like making sure they need to be updated. I would happily give them out. I don't mind whatsoever. That part's not bad, but like the responsibility of it is terrible.
No, I agree. It seemed like a terrible job having to adjust minutes projections at like 10 p.m. your time.
Yeah, I don't live in the right place to do that.
No, I don't think anybody else live in the right place or the right mindset. But
and yet,
but you know what?
And yeah, we got Alex and Tom and Eddie and stuff cranking this stuff out in the background 24/7. Man, it's insane.
Yeah, so I mean, that is a big feature to this year. I think the fact that you have Alex's projections, a lot of people before had wondered why they don't have his. Now you have his. So it's all on you from this point on if you are getting those projections. But go to awesemo.com/join and find those packages. There'll be one that works for you. Promise you that, because there's ones as low as $3.95 a week. So go check those out. All right, let's get into the important stuff here, the slate itself. Not that sponsors aren't important, but of course, slate is what people are here for.
Yeah.
So guys, hit that like button while we start. And Josh, let me ask you, we got some chalky, very cheap guys on today's slate. A lot of injuries as well, which are already hitting very fast in the early part of the NBA season. But how are you feeling about the chalk plays? Let's start with the Kings chalk plays in particular. We've got Bjelica, got Rashawn Holmes. I'm buying into one of those guys, but not the other one. So which would you guess I'm buying into, and which do you think I'm not?
Okay, let's see. I would rather have Bjelica, so you're probably on Holmes.
No, I'm fully on Bjelica.
Okay. We're on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, the Holmes thing, I get it. I get that people assume there's just going to be more big minutes. I found it odd that he and Dwayne Dedmon didn't play on the court at the same time in that opener. I think they do. I don't think they're direct backups, but I do think there is sort of it's not the way they want that offense to flow. Dedmon can stretch the floor, but I don't think you want him out there with Holmes. So I don't see the big bump for Holmes. I do see a decent bump for Bjelica. Some risk too, because we've seen him last year a bunch. He lost minutes to Bogdan Bogdanovic down the stretch. A lot of the other players, he had lost minutes a lot of times as chalk last year. But I think he has kind of a similar ability to Bagley, not a rebounder in the same way, but can stretch the floor, can take those corner threes, can take some of those Bagley shots. How are you feeling about Bjelica and Holmes in terms of the field? Are you going to be with it? Are you going to be above the field? Where are you?
I'm definitely going to be above on Bjelica, or at least that is my intention as of right now. On Holmes, I'll probably be close to neutral. I'm a big Dedmon fan today. So the spot that I'm getting to more than anything, well, I can't say more than anything because Bjelica's price is just stupid low. But the piece that I really want from Sacramento is Dedmon. I'm playing just on FanDuel. He's 4,500. I expect him to get the lion's share of the minutes at center. And if Rashawn Holmes is playing like Rashawn Holmes tends to play, he could be in foul trouble, and that could just be even more beneficial for Dedmon. So Dedmon is the guy that I have my eye on more than anything. I have like 3 times the field on FanDuel right now.
Yeah, I was very high on Dedmon in the opener, and I was kind of shocked he didn't get minutes. Granted, that game got sideways pretty fast, and as that happens, you can see a lot of different lineups coming out of that.
Yeah.
Dedmon's a good player. I kind of think this is his best shot at being like a player of note. We've seen him kind of toiling in obscurity for Atlanta the last few years, but he's been about as rock solid as you can be. He can shoot, he can rebound, he can block. He has a lot of great skill sets that I think are going to help him out in Sacramento. So I'm with you on that. Where's Dedmon's ownership at, actually? Because does that come up?
It's relatively low on FanDuel. That much I can tell you.
Okay, he's up to 20% on DK, so that's a little high, but still, I don't mind it. I'm right with that, actually.
He is at 13.7 on FanDuel, which is the second most owned center, and you're only rostering 1. But at the same time, he is 4,500. I think he's a fantastic value.
Yeah, I agree. Also, we just got an ownership update too if you are a premium member. So that took a slight little downtick for Dwayne Dedmon, but still just under 20% now on DraftKings. So I just want to make sure that I was accurate saying that one. All right, so that was some of the important value chalk. We have some other important value chalk because there's no DeAndre Ayton. His 25-game suspension for is it a PED thing, or is he doing?
I think it was a diuretic, if I believe.
Really?
I didn't really look
into it. He's just trying to stay ripped?
I assume he's trying to get something out of his system, I would imagine. They're claiming unintentional ingestion, but who knows? I mean,
25 games seems like a lot for something like that.
The dude looks like a 40-year-old man, and he's like 19 years old. So, I don't know. Maybe he needs testosterone because he's actually 60.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, he's also jacked to the gills, so that could certainly be a thing. But I think it's funny, though. Like, I mean, you're a UFC fan, all the testing that they do there and how John Jones can get away with pretty much anything, even though he's gotten some suspensions, not as bad as they could have been. And then the NBA, it's like, oh, DeAndre Ayton's taking some diuretics or whatever, and he's out for half the year already, or almost.
Yeah, well, the John Jones one is weird, if I may digress. Because one of those tests shouldn't have ever come out, and it makes it seem like there's been a lot on the surface, but he popped for cocaine, and that in a non-competition testing, which is technically okay. That information was just not supposed to be released to the public. So it makes
he pop for?
Oh, he popped other times too, for sure. But like,
yeah.
It always seems like it's like way more than it is because that one snuck through, even though he was allowed to do coke, I guess.
Well, I just thought the one was funny where he had like the whatever it was that blocks test. No, what was it? It's like some sort of maternity-based drug.
I think it might be clomiphene, but I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've looked at it.
Whatever Tom Lawler got tested or failed for, androstenedione or something like that. Where basically like they were like, yeah, John Jones has had that in his body forever because that's just what it is, even though it was like a masking agent. There was logically no, I don't know.
He's had picograms in his blood.
Yeah, he's got a lot of picograms of various things flowing through John Jones at any given moment.
Yes.
Let's talk about the replacement for DeAndre Ayton, who presumably is as clean as you can get, and also had a man bun for a while. So I support that for Aron Baynes. He's very cheap. Aron Baynes is. You assume that they need him out there because Nikola Jokic would abuse Frank Kaminsky, and maybe that's just how it's got to be. You need more scoring out there to keep up. But Baynes going to get the first crack. Going to be one of the chalkiest plays on the slate, one of the chalkiest value plays overall. How are you feeling about Aron Baynes?
It's weird for me. I'm not all that big of a fan on FanDuel. I'm relatively indifferent. He's 3,500. I just think that Dwayne Dedmon for $1,000 more is just like on a completely different level as a play. Because I think that Dwayne Dedmon can actually be involved in the game, whereas I don't really think that Aron Baynes will. For me, Baynes is someone that I'd be more likely to get to on DraftKings. As of right now, I probably don't have any Aron Baynes on FanDuel.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity costs on FanDuel if you were to go to somebody like Baynes.
Right. Like with Portis at 5,200 and Dedmon at 4,500, I don't need to go any lower, really.
Yeah, I'm with you on it. I think Baynes is a fine player. I did play him a couple times I had a couple calls on Live Before Lock last year where I think Eddie was a little more down on Baynes, and as you should be, because on a permanent basis, he's not that great. But I think there are some matchups that'll fit him sometimes. This one, I see him being needed out there, but I just don't see how he's going to be very valuable against the Denver team, who's really good across the board. And Jokic is going to pull him away from the paint a lot, too. Like, I don't even know how he stays on the floor, honestly, but I just know that he kind of has to, it seems like.
Yeah, it's really just not a great spot. I mean, what's he going to play? 24 minutes, 26 minutes, maybe something like that. I'm not too worried about having him.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate the concept of him in cash. I think there's still probably better plays. Like I think that's the low floor there, or the reasonable floor, low ceiling is a little more appealing there. But for a tournament, I just don't think he's a dude that's going to get you where you need to go.
Yeah, we're on the same page.
Another big who is out, Enes Kanter, opening up 25 minutes according to the rotations in that first game. Daniel Tice going to be a little bit owned. Looks like Robert Williams also a less owned, but really not above 10%. So not really hitting the radar for most people, I'm going to assume. I think this is actually a more interesting spot to me because there's just minutes to go around. Williams, a good permanent player. Tice, a pretty good permanent player who's had some upside before. How are you feeling about the Boston Bigs, and which would you prefer out of Williams and Tice?
I'm only going to have a small amount of Williams, but again, Tice is a power forward only on FanDuel, whereas Williams is the center. So I'm getting like a stupid amount of Daniel Tice, and that's also limiting the Rashawn Holmes for me. I hate it. I hate it so much because I don't trust Daniel Tice at all. It's not like he's going to suddenly be like a focal point with all of these other dudes that are still healthy. I just don't know how to get away from a guy that's 3,500 that basically has to play. Like, Time Lord is going to probably pick up fouls at a rate that is not sustainable.
No, I agree. And he's a good permanent player. I mean, the thing that jumps out to me, I guess, for both these guys really is Marcus Sol looked about as lead-footed as you possibly can in that opener. And granted, that's always been his MO. He's not a very fleet of foot guy. But I kind of wonder if we have passed the cliff for Marcus Sol a bit, where I don't know that I love him in the spot. I know that I don't love him keeping up with Robert Williams, especially, but Tice is a decent athlete too. So I think there is opportunity for those guys. And I do have a good amount of both and not in the same lines for the most part. But I think they're interesting value pivots to Aron Baynes in particular.
Yeah, it'd be interesting for me. I would have significantly less Tice, obviously, if he were at center on FanDuel. That power forward eligibility is just so helpful because the middle section of power forward is really gross. Like, Paul Millsaps and Hachimuras and Jaren Jacksons and stuff. I'm just not on that wavelength.
All right, so somebody in the YouTube chat asked this question. I'll use it as a segue because I don't think you're going to have an answer that's going to be very different. But would you take Karl Anthony Towns? I think was where I lost the question now, so this is going to bum me out. Would you take Karl Anthony Towns or would you take Dwayne Dedmon? Was the question.
I mean, that's an impossible question to answer.
Yes, I would agree. I would take Towns if I had to choose. If I had to give me raw points, Karl Anthony Towns over Dwayne Dedmon most days of the season.
What are you doing with the other $7,000?
It's going to the club, I guess. Yeah.
Oh, so I have to talk about something quickly. Were you on the social call today?
I was not. I'm not allowed on them anymore. I've been barred for them for some reason.
Well, that's fun. Neither here nor there. Super Chat is now available on YouTube, and William Pollock just dropped the old 2 bones into Super Chat with a question. So I'm going to hit on it right out of the gate, and it's not at all about NBA, really. Who wins, Khabib or El Kakui? So I think that Khabib would take out Tony Ferguson in that fight, but Tony Ferguson is just crazy enough to pick up that victory. But I would bet on Khabib. And will Melo play in the NBA? My guess is no. I don't think that he wants to come back to be the someone on the bench. I don't think that's just in his mental makeup.
No, I would agree. That's probably not his MO. But do we share the tips at the end like bartenders? Is that how they?
Yeah, no, that's not how this is going to work.
Oh, well, but good to know. So yeah, Super Chat it. Well, we will see your question. It does come up in bright neon lights on the screen, so that's fun.
Yes.
Yeah, but Dunstan asking who gets Super Chat money. I just learned as fast as you did that it's not me.
Yeah, it is not.
But thank you, William Pollock. We do appreciate the support. We appreciate you getting the ball rolling. And yeah, feel free to chime in with tips whenever you want. That will all go to keep the lights on here on this channel because we have so much content going on at any given moment. Let's talk more about the studs. Nikola Jokic, very underpriced on DK, not as underpriced on FanDuel. Karl Anthony Towns, about reasonably priced for what we've seen from him for pretty much every game he's ever played without Jimmy Butler. Looks stellar in the preseason, looks stellar in the opener. You had to have him pretty much to even cash in that opener. So how are you feeling about Towns and Jokic, and which of the two do you prefer because you're playing FanDuel?
I really don't have much of either today on FanDuel, but I prefer Jokic to Towns on DraftKings. I really love Jokic today. Having let me pull it up here so I can make sure that I have all the right information in front of my face. Denver. Looking at the sheet, like trying to get all of the baseball names out of my head and like looking for, like, you know, I'm just immediately like, where are the Rockies at? It's just the worst.
I fully relate. Even the data points where it's like, oh, what's Karl Anthony Towns' isolated power today?
Yeah.
How's he looking? What's his home run rate?
Jokic for 9,300 against Phoenix. It's actually probably a worse matchup for him now, oddly enough, because DeAndre Ayton is terrible defensively, whereas Aron Baynes is a little bit more defensive minded. But I think that he just eats here. I think more than anything, you might see him be like a big time facilitator. Lots of assists because Phoenix's defense just breaks down under the fact that they're also still not very good. So yeah, I would go to Jokic before I would go to Cat today. Not that I think that Cat is some problem. Like we're picking between two of the best centers, but my preference is Jokic because of his price.
Yeah, the price point is really hard to avoid with Jokic. I mean, on any sort of projection system, like I make my own, we have ours at Osmo. Josh makes his own. Like I think anyone you would find out there, and Fantasy Cruncher has theirs, of course. I feel like you're not going to find Jokic be a bad value on any of those sites. And if people want to avoid him because he got in foul trouble in the opener, and I think still had 40 fantasy points in 24 minutes, like that's not a reason to not play Jokic when his price is that low. It seems like the stud prices overall so far, at least on DK, have been lower than they would be in previous years for some reason.
Yeah, I would not expect Jokic to be 9,300 for like a very long time.
Yeah, other than those down periods he had, I remember he had some like he was like kind of like pea shy about shooting sometimes, where I feel like then his price goes down that low. But he's clearly who he is now, and he's a little more comfortable. And even if he's still working his way into shape, as we saw from some of those preseason photos, I think he's still a fantastic play going against the Phoenix team, who's kind of really struggled to defend him. That said, Towns looks fantastic too. I mean, going against Charlotte, who really doesn't have a big they can play against them. You assume you're going to see some Biyombo minutes, could theoretically see some Willie Hernan-Gomez minutes, but even still, that's not going to do much. Marvin Williams was the backup center in that first game with Cody Zeller, not in the lineup, of course, today. How are you feeling about Towns, and where are you shaking out with them, I guess, relative to the field?
I'm basically not going to have all that much just because of how much value is at the center spot. Portis and Dedmon soaking up a lot for me right now. I don't think that I'm going to get to a ton of Towns. I'm getting to more AD. I'm getting to like a really staggering amount of Pascal Siakam, but I'm not really getting to the high levels. If I'm spending into the 5 digits in FanDuel, it's going to Luka.
I'd like to be going to Siakam because he's not terribly good. It doesn't look like he's going to be terribly owned, at least in the most recent run of ownership on DK. And I think he's a really strong play. I mean, him and Van Vliet, I think you can sleep on that a little bit. And certainly that was a pace up spot. This one should be a little bit slower. But those guys shot a lot. Like Siakam shot over 25 times. Van Vliet shot around the same amount. Like I think they're both in nice spots, and I don't mind paying up for Siakam in particular.
By the way, we got Ben McBrizzle was asking LeBron yes or no, locking Doncic and Jokic. I'm not all that fond of LeBron, but it depends what site. I think he's just too expensive on FanDuel today. And El Negro Loco is amazing, by the way.
I was going to get to that one next. I agree on your take on El Negro Loco. He is, in fact, amazing. And thank you guys for the super chats. LeBron, I do think a little bit differently. I just, a little bit of a narrative thing, but also like I thought he performed well enough in that game. I think I think he's got those rabbit ears up, or he hears all the critiques from him in that first game. I think going against Utah, I mean, it's still tough inside with Rudy Gobert, but now you have AD there is going to take some of that pressure away. I think it's actually a pretty decent LeBron spot. I'm not sure I'd want to pay up for Doncic and Jokic and LeBron in one lineup, but I do think LeBron is very playable today. And I think he's probably going a little bit under-recognized because people are probably buying into the LeBron is washed up narrative and on all that stuff, which I feel like has been on every media outlet that I've listened to.
And don't underestimate Bojan being out of the game for the Jazz. He would have had some of the assignment on LeBron today. I think that matters. He's defended him well in the past. It's going to have to fall probably more so on like Royce O'Neal or Jeff Green. But that's just one less guy that you can throw at him.
Yeah, and also still no starting point guard in the mix. I mean, Rondo is questionable. I think the assumption is getting closer to playing, but that's certainly going to help out LeBron as well. At least it's theoretical upside, even though it did kind of take it out of him. It's like a little bit of the energy out of him in that spot, in that first opener there. But yeah, I think LeBron's a pretty solid play. Just at that price point, I think you'd rather have a lot of guys in that price range, but I still don't have an issue with him. All right. Let's just look through the chat real fast. Oh, is that you saying thank you to everybody in the chat too?
Nope.
Oh man, we're very grateful here on this channel, which I appreciate.
Should make
all right,
Nightbot just thank them.
yeah, I think that would be nice too. That probably can't work that way, right? I guess you probably could do it. Anyway, let's talk about some of the higher price guards because we do have some guys at the same price point. I think it's probably worthwhile to hit on the studs because of all the value that we have up top here.
Yeah.
Kyrie Irving went nuts in that first game. Luka Doncic also looking pretty solid as well. Has been historically really good, playing in another fast-paced spot against New Orleans. Two higher price guards, Bradley Beal, probably getting a little bit slept on because he got ejected from that first game and had a little bit of a tougher time. Just missed a ton of shots in that opener versus Dallas. How are you feeling about the high priced guards and which one is your favorite out of your ownership?
Luka Doncic. He's the guy that I'm getting to the most. He's the guy that I'm paying up for more than anybody else. I see no reason to get away from him. I think he's incredible. He's only going to get better and better. This game is going to be at like a really ridiculous pace. Just using my rolling pace numbers, this is like a +6 possession game for the Mavs. I want all of the Luka today.
Are you feeling similarly? I mean, since we're talking about the game, do you feel similarly about anybody else here? Porzingis, Maxi Kleber, who busted his chalk the other day. Anybody like that?
I don't really have much else other than Luka from this game.
Okay, that's fair. How do you have any thoughts on Kyrie? Because I do think, he did come out very motivated, certainly putting up 50 fantasy points or 50 real life points and over 75 fantasy points is going to be a nice opening for him. But he really just has to run to the castle until KD's back. LeVert will take some usage. Joe Harris, we saw Jared Allen get some looks. Like some of those guys will take a little bit away, but Kyrie basically can choose whatever he wants. And now he's facing the Knicks in a rivalry game. Is he somebody you're landing on at all, or is it just all going to Doncic?
I have a little bit of Kyrie. On my last crunch before we started this show, I was like just a hair north of the field. So we have him at 17%. I figure I come in around 20.
Okay. I think that's fair. I guess anybody else on the Nets interest you? Because I do think I really just think it's Kyrie's team. And I think there are some guys who are good there. Like I do believe in Karis LeVert's talent. I think they have. And Jared Allen's been a guy who I'm intrigued to see how he evolves, especially now that we know seems like he'll be getting run over DeAndre Jordan for the most part. But any other Nets jump out to you as being worthwhile and a winnable spot versus the Knicks team who's also playing with some more paces here?
Yeah, Taurean Prince. He's a small forward on FanDuel, which is a place that is generally a wasteland. So I think that he's playing a much different role. He played a ton of minutes in the opener. I'm going right back to him today. He's owned at like 10%. I'll probably have around 20.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I like the price on him a bit. I think it's sort of tough to project his new role because he had a lot of rebounds on that opener, but that could just be how the game kind of flows around for them. And so it's been a good per minute player when he's in Atlanta too.
I've always been a big fan of his, and I think that he could take a step forward just having like a lot of talent around him.
One other high-priced guard who I just kind of skimmed over. I guess we have a couple in this range which are worth talking about. Damian Lillard, going back to the Bay Area, has always been a spot for him. That's more of a narrative thing, but he also had a good opener as well. We know the usage for him. We know his skill set. And going against the Sacramento team, who really just got dusted in their opener by Phoenix. How are you feeling about Lillard? Because he's really kind of the forgotten man out of this group. I would say he and Beal for the most part, but Lillard, I think, is the lowest out of all these guys we've hit on so far.
I essentially don't have him. I would rather have Kyrie at that same spot, and then Luka's only $400 more. So I'm out. Oh, there are 3 guys north of 9K on FanDuel today at point guard: Luka, Kyrie, Dame. Dame is the one that gets pinched for me.
Interesting. Okay, I have a little bit of Dame just because I landed on that salary price point being open for a little bit. And I think that's where Dame becomes more interesting, is that if you have the money to get to Kyrie and then you go to Dame or you go to Beal or you go to Drew Holiday, who should also see some upticks as well with his role being what it is and no AD out there anymore. I think there are some guys, like I do like getting to those guys and maybe splitting some ownership. But Kyrie's not highly owned enough. But I guess if you have 40% between Doncic and Irving, like I don't mind going to a little bit less of those two and then trying to get some Beal, Drew, and Lillard in the mix because those guys I think have a similar upside.
Yeah, and again, it's hard to talk about guys like this where I'm just saying like I don't have Dame. That's not like it's just how the roster construction is working for me today. Right. I just greatly prefer Luka and Kyrie, but it's still Damian Lillard. He's still, a top 10 guard in the league, top 5 guard in the league. You're not going wrong by having him. I just have bigger preferences elsewhere.
Yeah, Mike Campbell in the YouTube chat, who's not super chatting us, but he's saying, yes, Spags Lillard for me. I just think he's a guy who's going a little bit overlooked. And I think sometimes, for tournaments especially, that can be a situation where you get a little bit of leverage on the field there. If things go wrong or there's some blowouts or whatever, Lillard should be in the mix, at least, I think, if you are giving these guys ownership. Since we've done the super chats, I feel like we should turn to the premium Slacks. Saz Crib in the premium Slack asking a question. Out of the OKC players, who should be your priority to target against the sorry Washington team? I think for me, it would be Chris Paul. I have a little bit of him. I do like Shea. I do like Danilo Gallinari, but I think Chris Paul's price is just too low. He didn't really take a price jump. The role is what the role is. He's going to have a lot of opportunity. But who would you say out of the OKC players would be the one you'd want to go to?
Previously, I was getting more Gilgeous-Alexander than anybody else. I was getting essentially 0 Gallinari, relatively neutral on Chris Paul. I do want to point out SGA's price on Yahoo. That's really like the most interesting piece of the Thunder across all 4 sites. He's $17. Without question, he should be like pretty highly owned for you there.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's see, anything else worth premium Slack? All right, nothing good on the premium Slack. Making sure where we're really running the house here today between all the chats, really making sure we get that engagement up for you guys. So hit that like button, help us do that, please, because the likes also help us keep the lights on here as much as the super chats do, if not more. So please do that if you don't want to give us money.
Treveon Graham starting again for the Wolves, which is fascinating.
Yeah, what I was actually going to ask, so I wanted to ask you, because I have a couple of plays that I might just be specific to me, like that I find interesting. But Treveon Graham is one where the minutes load was there. He's been a good per minute player for them, or a decent per minute player. He's a pivot to these cheap guys. Now that you know he's starting, are you going to play some Treveon Graham?
No, I'm not.
Okay, I am playing some Treveon Graham already because I assumed he was starting.
I would want him on my team if I were playing real basketball. I don't need him on my team since I'm playing fantasy basketball.
Interesting. Okay. He's to me, he's a guy who contributes on enough categories where at a cheap price point as a pivot to some of these other guys, like I do think he's an interesting play. And Ricky Geiger on the premium Slack saying, why is Treveon Graham unowned or not being talked about? 30 minutes in regulation, shot 4 of 13, 4 assists on 7 potential. That's where I saw it too, Ricky. So I'm with you on it. I don't think he's like a lock play. I think if he were 4,500, I'd probably be feeling less bullish on it. But 3,300 on DK, I think Treveon Graham is worth some exposure.
They just have so many options on the wing right now that are all sort of like slightly different, that if he doesn't start well, it wouldn't shock me for them to just throw a bunch more minutes at a Koji or Jake Layman or who's the new guy? Culver.
Yeah, it can go other ways, but I don't know. I just like the matchup is so good for Charlotte because Charlotte really should be one of the worst defensive teams in the league this year.
Very true.
I don't think it's a bad spot. And wait, is it Treveon Graham was a Hornet at some point, wasn't he? Or am I thinking of Devontae Graham? They might be thinking of Devontae.
He was on the Nets last year.
Well, I know he was on last year, but I think they had a double Graham. I feel like they had a couple Teddy Grahams on that Hornets lineup at some point. He was a Hornet.
Yeah, probably 2016, 17 maybe?
17, 18.
Okay.
In fact, there is a YouTube highlight reel of top plays, or an NBA.com one of top plays of Treveon Graham.
Surprised it's not a Vine.
Yeah, that could be. It could be a TikTok.
Yeah.
Now.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Set it to music. Another ownership update. Our boy Makad points out. Just want to give him a shout out. You said you're playing a lot of high price guys. Brandon asking in the premium Slack or FanDuel roster construction are getting more double punts at power forward. You said that was the reason you like Tice. So are you double punting at power forward today?
I'm not a ton. It's more of a single punt with Tice than anything else. But I am recrunching right now. I'm just about done, so I'll be able to get a little bit more info here. But Tice is definitely like one of the primary punts today, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would agree. I think especially if he is going to have that power forward eligibility on FanDuel and dual position eligibility on DK, that makes him a little more easy to get in there and more appealing overall probably than guys like Baynes who are you don't want to give up those center spots on either side.
Right.
Man,
I miss talking about basketball.
It's nice to have it back. A lot more wrinkles in baseball, for sure.
Yeah, it's just a much more appealing conversation.
I agree. I also think it's fun, too, that there's like Treveon Graham highlight reels from Charlotte. It's like, There's probably not even like who would be a good young hitter. There's probably not even like a lot of Juan Soto highlights before like this World Series. I feel like they're just like, who's that guy? He's cool. He's a good young guy.
I mean, how many times can you just watch someone hit a home run?
A lot. Chicks dig the long ball, Josh. I don't know if you've heard that.
Yeah, tons of chicks really caring that people hit home runs.
That's what they're known for. Chicks are known for caring exclusively about power hitting.
If chicks dig the long ball, then what, like 65-year-old white men like bunts?
Oh yeah, I mean, 60-year-old white men. They're all Cardinals fans, and they love bunts. They love small ball in baseball.
All right, Crunch
all
is
right.
done. Let me go ahead and refresh here and see where I come out just on my first draft before I start making any tweaks.
Anything jumping out interesting to you in terms of your ownership? You've talked about some of your guys, but anything at all particularly noteworthy?
Still a ton of Luka. I have a ton of Mike Conley, which I don't know if we're gonna get to. He was the fucking dirt worst in the opener. Excuse my language, but it kind of deserves it. I think I said it on one of the shows. I pull my box score data from Basketball Reference, and they have game score as a column at the end. And Mike Conley was dead last among everyone that played a single second in the opener. I had 35% then, so that one stung. Doing basically the same thing again today.
Also, Biyombo officially starting for the Hornets, which I think was an expectation, or at least a highly probable possibility.
I got a lot of Joe Ingles now with Boyan out. Gave him a couple extra minutes. He's 5,100. Again, small forward, so a position that's not all that awesome. It also does have me significantly lower on B Jelly.
Oh, okay. So interesting. So here's one guy who I liked a lot the other day, and I think he's in a great spot again. His price didn't take a jump. Marcus Morris. You said Bojan at 51 or at Ingles at 5,100. I know you're talking FanDuel prices, but on DK, I think Marcus Morris still way too cheap for what his role is. He played almost 40 minutes in that game. I think shot almost 20 times. He's in a really nice spot, and he's a small forward, so he's not in that power forward log jam. Is he somebody that you're landing on at all? I don't know what his FanDuel price is.
Not really. I think I have one share as of right now.
Okay.
I trust his minutes more than just about anybody else on the Knicks, but I'm not getting to a lot of Knicks.
Okay, that's fair. I actually got a good amount. I think Elfrid Payton on his DK price is also pretty appealing now that we know he's starting, and he's theoretically at least gonna it's a Fizdale team. Anything can happen. Dennis Smith could have 40 minutes today, and it wouldn't shock me.
Alfonso Trier started and played 7 minutes.
the full Keith Bogans treatment for him, which is pretty rough. But Trier getting back in there and playing 30 minutes too wouldn't be shocking. But Elfrid Payton, this spot, I assume you're going to want his defense out there. He's the best defender out of that group. Going against Kyrie, I don't think he's actually going to do anything against Kyrie. But I think just being out there, if he gets the minutes at under 5K on DraftKings, I'm intrigued by this game actually a lot with the Knicks and Brooklyn, because I think it is a rivalry game, and I think it's going to have more of a rivalry game feel this year because the Knicks really thought they were going to get Kyrie and Durant.
The Knicks are so bad.
Are they though? Are they really?
Yeah, they really are. They really are.
I don't think they are. I think they get a bad rap. I think they signed a lot of talent. Whether it flows together or not, I think you could certainly argue that. But you have a lot of big guys who are at least capable of doing stuff, and a lot of wing players. And RJ Barrett, I really was down on him going into the draft. Actually, at one point thought Cam Reddish was a better prospect than him. But he's actually looking like he belongs in the league. Whether he's Rudy Gay or not, I think remains to be seen. But
big time
I think
pass.
they're not that
Pass.
bad.
And I say that as a Duke fan. They didn't sign anybody that has a functional pulse defensively. And the only guy that is really good on defense is a guy that they will refuse to play. It's incredible.
Oh, also, our old pal Emac pointing out in our Slack right now said that the deep dive actually is free today from Adam. So Emac is going to post the link in the chat momentarily. But go check it out because Adam and Lofty every day do a great job with that article.
They do.
And it is a premium one normally, but it is free today. So go check it out because we have freebies every day. If you are looking for the free content we have on the site, by the way, on any given day, go to the Osmo_com Twitter handle. We always have those running through whenever there is a free projections or free ownership or anything like that. They do make a good announcement on there, so it's an easy way to keep track. Tighten Up, Turn Up asks thoughts on Elf for FanDuel. I talked about my Elf thoughts in general, but how do you feel about his FanDuel price, even if you're not playing him?
I don't have him at all.
Okay.
I don't know what to do with this team. He could play 8 minutes, 20 minutes, 36 minutes. I don't know what to do. If I knew that he could get minutes, for sure, I like him the most. But I just don't want to be there. There are too many other options today.
Yeah, all right, that's fair. I think at his price point, I just think that opens up some stuff for me. I still would, I like paying up if I can, but I have to find value wherever I can possibly to try to get Towns and Jokic in on DK. And that's, he's one of the guys that opens up for me. I think him, Morris, probably two of my higher owned guys, in addition to the very obvious chalk we talked about earlier.
What do you think of Devin Booker today?
So he always projects extremely well with my projections. I don't like the spot for him because there are so many guys you can throw at him, and at his price, like he doesn't quite make the mark for me. But conceptually, like I'm into it. I do think Phoenix is going to be feistier than people realize. I know I might have said that last year too, but Booker got hurt. Some things went south there, but I think Phoenix, I mean, they showed it in that first game. They are coming pretty hard under Monty Williams now, and I think they are an interesting team. So I don't hate him. I didn't land there, but he projects over the threshold for me. He's over 5x value on DK.
Okay. I like him a little bit. I think he's sneaky because he's getting completely ignored. And I know people are talking about like his finger and stuff, but they just removed the other good offensive player from the team. So I think that he's just going to like take a run at it. I like him in a low ownership spot because he's the kind of guy that like doesn't have a conscience if it starts getting hot.
Yeah, I agree. And I think too, like there is more talent on this roster. I mean, having Dario, having Oubre taking another year of advantage to just, being in a proper league situation and just learning how to be a better player all around. Rubio too, I thought looked really good in the opener. He was a guy I was on and was happy with the results there. So I think there's more talent around there, or it wouldn't shock me for them to just hang in just enough. And then Booker, if they are going to hang in and have a shot and be competitive into the fourth quarter, I think you're probably expecting a good day from Booker.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't hate that, especially with all the Jokic out there. Like for Jokic to get 4 quarters, you probably need Booker to be scoring. Would be my thought.
That's a really good point.
But but we'll see. It is an 11-point spread, so which has gone up a little bit since old DeAndre decided to hit the skids. Yeah. Also, shout out to whatever language is going on in the YouTube chat because these guys have been in here for a couple days now, and I don't know what they're speaking. Do you see this Larem and then there's another guy like Bilal who were talking back and forth in another language?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Let's run that through Google Translate and see what we've got.
They were doing it yesterday on Eddie's thing and going back and forth on the show I did with Eddie yesterday. And I was like, I don't know what they're doing, but it's not like troll stuff because they're talking to each other. So I don't know, but I'm intrigued.
It detected it as Turkish. Some of the words didn't come up, but it says, I hope your child is always a girl. You do not put the name of the boy. Beauty and intelligence always look like you. So I don't know.
Okay, so it might be spam. Or they're just having a really genuine conversation in our YouTube chat.
Yeah, I got nothing. Otto Porter limited to 24 minutes today.
Yeah, I wasn't playing any Otto anyway.
I hope I'm not. I don't really want to tweak it just to get rid of him. I can't imagine that I have much of anything, but...
Gary, let's get some questions from the premium Slack because we're just doing a question-heavy show because we covered most of the key parts, I think, up top here. Thoughts on Josh Hart from Legalized? Can you type the answer in here? Oops. Legalized doesn't want our questions being out there, but Josh Hart, I don't think is he's not a very low friction play. He played 30 minutes on national TV. I don't think that's scary.
I don't have any Josh Hart, so
I have a little bit because he's so cheap on DK, and it's very possible he gets minutes again because the defense that he brings to the table and his ability to score is a different look than Lonzo. Lonzo's a great defender, but not going to hit open shots. And against Dallas, you might need that. So I do have some. But I think, to lock him in, if he were a chalk play today, I'd probably be a little more leery of him because I think Lonzo's going to get some of those minutes back. It was a bad look for him being on the bench for basically the last quarter and a half in that game.
Yeah, I don't think that those minutes are indicative of what's going to be in the future for Josh Hart.
I think too, there was also something which I think they mentioned on the deeper dive right before us, but Legalize, I'm sorry, buddy. I'm going to give you crap every time. That's just how it goes here. But yeah, I think they mentioned too that Alvin Gentry had actually said verbatim to the press that the second unit got extra run. He wouldn't expect that moving forward because they just were the hot hand. He liked the look they brought. So yeah,
fair enough.
Oh boy, T McBeeve. That's a fun. You should read that. I don't want to read that one out loud because I don't want to offend our Turkish friends. Any thoughts on Zach Collins today? ABC Sice is asking in the premium Slack. Not somebody I landed on. Don't really view him as a high upside play. I actually have Hassan Whiteside a little bit. Did not land on Zach Collins, but any Zach Collins for you or Whiteside, honestly, because I think he's actually a pretty interesting play.
Let's see what I had last time. Zach Collins, 24%, so almost twice the field. He's just going to play a lot. I think he's really good. And I think he's dramatically underpriced on FanDuel. He's 5,100. So very much team Zach Collins.
Richard Phipps asking in the YouTube chat, does Melly hit the rim on any of his threes tonight? I think he's meaning in a positive way. Melly's a guy I think can actually win more minutes as opposed to Hart. Like, I don't think Hart's ever going to have a stable role, but Melly does seem like he could take some away from Derek Favors. Like, Favors is a solid professional NBA player. Melly offers a different look there. He's basically like a really good Ryan Anderson, I think would be the best way I would, modern Ryan Anderson, or maybe a vintage Ryan Anderson too. But I like Melly. Do you have any Melly thoughts?
I like Derek Favors.
Okay. Like tonight or just in general?
Just in general.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I think Melly's going to have upside. I think I didn't play him tonight, but I do think it's too big of a slate, but I do think Melly's going to have some nice days. He's very active, and his shot is just really, the preseason and in that opener, I know, granted, very limited sample size, but he's got a really nice stroke.
I don't know what to make of him yet. I think that he fits that team really well. I'm not so sure that he's going to matter from a DFS perspective.
Brian Peel, I wish you had super chatted this so I could really thank you, Brian. Josh, you sound like Tina Belcher.
Who?
From Bob's Burgers.
Oh, I've never seen it.
Oh, you should watch that. I think you'll appreciate it a little bit. I still go with Ray Romano.
Great.
Come on. Deborah.
I'm not Kermit the Frog.
That's my Ray Romano, though, and it's very close. Chat, chime in, super chat me and tell me if super chat us $2 and tell me if I'm right about that impression.
Look at you.
We got some either ors in here, or at least one. We don't want to do a bunch of them, but we're doing, it's a very chat forward show today because we want to make sure you guys are feeling good about everything. And again, an easy slate to kind of dig through, at least in the early parts of the value being established. Sir Royce is asking Marvin Williams or Kaminsky for FanDuel. Who would you appreciate more out of that duo?
Marvin Williams.
I would actually be more inclined for Kaminsky. I don't like him as a potential chalk player, as that one that people are treating like, oh, he's a lock play. I just think there are ways where you need Kaminsky in there for his offense. And I think Marvin Williams, there were ways where they get away from him because he's just going to get dusted every time he's in there against Cat.
Everybody's going to get dusted every time they're in there against Cat, though. That's the problem. He's one of the best guys in basketball. Like, I don't think that anybody is particularly set up to stop him. If they're going to give up buckets at the rim, maybe. But if Cat's stretching the floor, I think Marvin Williams has a better chance to hang with him.
Okay, yeah, that's a fair take. And Cat, I'm actually one of the players, just talking general NBA stuff, one of the players I'm most intrigued to see his development now that he has this room and room to kind of grow and thrive, and they're just putting role players around him. I think if you get Wiggins out of there, I think you really can see peak the Charizard evolution of Karl Anthony Towns. I'm intrigued to see where he takes that.
Now you're talking about Pokemon, man. You're all over the map.
I've been doing contests at 7 a.m. my time, so I am delirious. So it's gonna happen a lot on these Thursdays and Fridays.
Fair enough.
All right, ownership projections update. Our boy Makad pinged us with, so go check those out if you are a premium member. I'll take a look to see if anything changed materially. Still, Rashawn Holmes still looking very chalky. People not getting scared off by that. I don't know. I could be wrong about this play, but I really don't think that's a great play.
I'm slowly working my way back. He's at 48% on FanDuel right now. I have half of that. Basically, I have Tice flip-flopped with Holmes.
Okay, which I think actually that's about where I am too. I have much less Holmes relative to the field on DK. He's at 29% on DK. I think I'm at about 10, and that was enough for me. I just don't really feel like it's the right play, but I've been wrong before and a litany of things.
I'm betting more on Bielitsa than I am on Holmes. And they're both equally owned today.
Spags, you have ADD. I don't, or at least I don't think so, but also JS talking Turkish and English, which throws me for a loop. Do you have ADD? No, I just run in between two chats. We're trying to make all the chat people happy. We're trying to take care of you all one by one. So that's it.
We're good like that.
Yeah. Let's see. Is it worth Chloe Shannon in the YouTube chat asking, is it worth doubling down on high priced guys on one position tonight? And if so, which position? That feels like more of a FanDuel question, and I don't know if you have a great answer to it, but do you have an answer for Cloyce?
I'm fine double paying up at point guard if you get Luka and Kyrie, or depends what you mean by pay up. So I would happily get Drew Holiday plus Bradley Beal or something. I don't really mind that all that much. If you get to Siakam and LeBron, I don't really have much of an issue there. So those things are viable. It's all about who you're paying up for.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm paying up. I mean, I'm paying up at center in a couple spots. And I also have some lineups where I have Luka and Kyrie. So yeah, I mean, I'm doing it on DK too. But DK obviously a little bit different because you have that position flexibility. Not at center, but you do have still have 2 center spots and a lot of guard spots to get those guys in. Josh is the man. There we go from PJ Clemens, one of the regulars here. I agree. Josh is the man. Josh Hart, one of the best guys out there.
That's not nice.
I think you're the man. You know that.
No one should think I'm the man. Let's be clear here.
How is Siakam's matchup tough tonight? Oh, sorry. I'm just reading all of legalized chats. I don't think Siakam's matchup is tough. I think that's something I would actually like to talk a little bit about more because we hit on it fast in the top part. But Siakam, I think, is going to be good in almost every matchup because they really used him in creative ways. And he got some blow bys on people. Like, he looks like he's ready to take that usage and make the most of it. I think Van Vliet, too. Van Vliet really has jumped out to me in the preseason and the regular season so far.
Yeah, I have 25% Pascal Siakam right now. I'm more than happy with it. I kind of want to give him a little bit more of a boost, but I don't really know where that ownership would come from. But no, I'm a really big fan of Siakam today. Very happy to have him. I think he's really good. I wouldn't be surprised if Pascal Siakam was on an All-NBA team this year.
I agree. It's the rebounding and the scoring is really there. And I think, too, the fact the Celtics, not having Cancer in there, certainly not a great defender, but he's a great rebounder. There's going to be more rebounds up for grabs, too. And Siakam rebounds. He takes the ball up the court like he's doing. I guess that's not as uncommon now because even Andre Drummond has taken the ball up the court fully now, which makes me laugh. I enjoyed seeing that yesterday, but that's hilarious that he's like dribbling entirely up the court. He had one play where he drove all the way up the court and then just ran his own post up. And I was like, wow, that doesn't seem like that should be happening.
It probably shouldn't.
Here we go. I'm just going to read all the positive Josh things. Been watching Josh for years now. He is the man, Bradley says in the YouTube chat.
I'm glad I paid all these people to come in and compliment me.
All your fivers that you did.
That's where all the super chat money goes. I just give that back to all the people that I paid off.
As you should. It's a good investment. T McBee, getting distracted and going on a tangent halfway through answering a question about whether you have ADD might be a sign that you have ADD. That is probably fair. I think
it's pretty on the nose.
We're getting content for as long as I have. I think you kind of do, especially with this job now too, where we have to kind of jump from project to project a lot. I do feel like I probably have developed more ADD.
I've had it my entire life. I just can't ever go to the doctor to deal with it. But it's been problematic since I was 6 years old.
I don't think it's ever affected me with school stuff, but as an adult, I feel like we all have some degree of ADD. Especially if you compare you to the 50s version of you, we probably all have it on some extent.
It destroyed me in school.
Oh, well, you know what? We ended up in the same spot, so
I didn't I never really realized we're going off on a tangent. I don't know how to say it. I was in, classes, not honors classes, but a specific set of classes for smart people in elementary school and growing up. And then when they stopped and I was just out in class, I just had no ability to pay attention to anything. So I never found school hard. I did just enough to get by, but it was really difficult to sit down and actually get stuff done. And that went all the way through college where you can't fake it as much.
I was always the opposite where, I, as you might be able to guess, if you've watched any of the content I do, I talk fast and my brain moves fast. So I was in gifted classes too when I was in public school. When I was in 5th grade, they consolidated them. And it would be slower kids and the gifted kids they thought it would kind of raise all boats kind of thing. And it's one of those things where if I don't get fully stimulated all the time, I just kind of tune out. Yeah. At least when I was younger, especially. Now, maybe not the same.
It was rough, and I just that's not a diagnosis you get from where I lived in 1996. My dad will just be like, "Yo, pay attention."
Well, you know what? Now you're thriving, so that's all I could say.
Everything worked out perfectly.
All right, so I have legalized lineup here. I'm going to read it. Gotcha. I bet he thought for a second I would do that. I'm not that much of a troll.
Well, get RJ Barrett out of there, brother.
Pedrito PR asking, Buddy Hield or Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on FanDuel? Which of those guys do you prefer more, or which do you have more of?
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is my second most owned shooting guard. Buddy Hield is in 5 lineups.
Okay. Yeah. Why Shai? Just the price thing? I mean, his usage has been there, so I get it. But anything jumping out in particular with him?
I just think he's really good.
I agree.
He just grades out really well, and relative to the other people that are around him in salary, I think he stands out. just where he's at. Actually, you know what? I do kind of want to walk that back. I think I have a little bit too much.
I find Heald a bit intriguing because of the questionable tag. I think even the Kings handle, which I saw Buddy Heald replied to because somebody retweeted that. I thought it's kind of interesting that people just probably won't be on him today because of that whole situation, and he should have more usage to go around without Bagley in that lineup. So I don't mind Heald, but Shea's a very talented player, so it's really a little bit like choosing a favorite child. But I think I would err on the side of Heald, even though it is a really nice matchup for Shea.
It's definitely SGA for me no matter what, but I am walking back my love. I essentially don't have Heald. I'm a little worried about his health.
Okay, that's fair. Nico in the YouTube chat asking, Josh and Chris, what'd you guys finish in college? I don't know what that means, but I had a 3.3 GPA in my major. So
I graduated with a 2.0 on the dot. I got a B on my final to land that so that I could graduate. I literally did the exact minimum that I could do.
I knew that I wasn't going to grad school, so I just didn't care. It wasn't important to me.
I went to Kutztown University, man. Does not matter what your grades are. They don't give a shit. It's just a diploma. Your grades don't matter when you go to a garbage state school in Pennsylvania. I'd care a lot more about my grades if I went to Harvard.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, but the thing is, you're paying for the degree more than anything. You're not paying people, for the most part, are oh, wow. I don't know. Having paid what I paid for USC, I probably all in paid $55,000 and not counting all the financial aid. But in terms of the loans I took out, did I get $55,000 worth of education as I took an earthquake class that I didn't even need and I don't remember anything about, or linguistics or German culture? No. So I don't know. I think you just get through it, get the degree, and hope that carries you.
I just hate that you have to go and pay money and they're but you need to take intro to music. It's
oh, Nico was asking what degrees. I was public relations and a minor in theater.
Ooh, I was finance with a minor in economics.
So yours actually kind of helped. Mine add no value to my life currently.
I mean, I got them. They're not exactly paying dividends.
Tommy G in the premium Slack asking CP3 or Whiteside for that final spot.
So I guess this is a DraftKings question. Probably CP3. Trust it a little bit more.
Man, I like Whiteside, but yeah, CP3, better floor, better ceiling, I think. So, but Whiteside, an intriguing play. I think this matchup's really good, and we kind of saw Sacramento getting abused inside just the other day. So I don't know. I think Whiteside is a little intriguing there.
Alrighty, I need to paste my lineups in. I already have dummies and stuff in. I'm not too worried about it, but this is gonna be my final update. I'm gonna call it.
Anything else changing with your final crunches?
No, nothing too crazy. This is still the same crunch that I ran before. I had 1,000 lineups run, so I'm gonna go with what I've got.
Dustin Cole, way to go, Spags. I like the Travion Graham revenge play. To be clear, I'm not classifying it as a revenge play, but it is one. It does happen to be one, but it's just more that he's just cheap and he played 30 minutes. It's always worthwhile.
Yeah, if he's gonna get those minutes, he's someone that I think that I could have in the future, but I find it really difficult to get to now because I'm just not confident that those minutes are gonna stay there. I mean,
yeah, no, that's fair.
We weren't projecting him to play yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever their first game was. I had to add him fully, and so did Alex. So I can't just immediately assume that we were wrong by 30-something minutes, but maybe we were.
Sometimes that's early season NBA though. I feel because that's where it's kind of like NFL in the first 3 weeks where they're oh, that's where the edge still is because people don't have their projections and don't get how the offenses work. And I feel that's NBA where it's what, this guy got 40 minutes? How? And yeah. I think that's one of those spots. But we'll see. Watch him get 0 minutes today. Just he'll play, immediately get the hook, and it'll just be Jarrett Culver for 45 minutes.
Hopefully. I don't have Travion Graham, so whatever ends other people's lineups is great for me.
Kyle Ziegler asking, you said earlier you don't like Josh Hart, so who do you like at shooting guard in his price range on FanDuel, if anybody?
What's his price? He's not even on my player list, so let me take a look quickly. Josh Hart is 4,400, so no one at shooting guard. I would rather go up to Dennis Schroeder maybe. Actually, I could look at this in an easier way. Shooting guard. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, I just wouldn't pay I wouldn't be that far down at shooting guard. I would be looking to save money elsewhere.
You know, it was right there. Travion Graham, 4,200.
Also,
on
just
FanDuel.
not anywhere near me.
I think he is a pivot. He is a pivot to go to at that price point. So I would throw him out. Just, for me, whenever I hear people talk about a guy, I'm always like, I should play one lineup with that guy because I'm going to feel like an asshole if I didn't take the signs the universe gave me. So maybe that's a sign.
Yep.
Play Travion Graham a little on FanDuel.
Maybe Bogdanovich. I don't really hate that.
Yeah.
But I have the large majority of my shooting guard exposure is at the top in salary, particularly Drew Holiday. So I'm not really in any position. Like I'm not down there at all.
Okay. That's fair. Somebody asked Anthony Davis. I feel like we might have talked about him briefly, but somebody interested in it all. I think the question was phrased like, who's going to defend Anthony Davis? Rudy Gobert, if they keep running him in the post like they did in that first game. But
yeah.
And even on the pick and rolls, I think still you're going to see a lot of Gobert chasing him down and making it a little bit tougher on him. But Davis, not somebody I land on a bunch. How are you with Davis?
I've got 20%, which is north of the field. I don't get the sense they'll run a ton of pick and roll in this spot. They didn't seem to run it in the first one, but probably don't need to roll towards Rudy Gobert. I can see a little bit more of a pick and pop between the two. Try to pull Rudy back out. And obviously AD can shoot threes, so like he can pop to any sort of distance. I think that might be a little bit better of a look, unless you're getting LeBron rolling to the basket, which he's going to just try to yam on everybody if he can. So
yeah, no, that's fair. I think it's a tough spot for AD, but as a contrarian play, because I think everybody's going to think it's a tough spot because of Gobert being in there. So, and he's not terribly owned. So I think in that case, like, sure, 17% on DK seems more than fair to me.
I've said this a lot. Rudy Gobert is really, really good at limiting shots at the rim and helping the team's defense. He is not an individual defender that makes other centers just not score. He just makes the other team worse.
Yeah, I agree with that take. Because you see centers sometimes have big days against them. Usually, like Towns, I feel like has had a couple okay days against them, and some of those guys.
He's really good, but I don't care too much about Rudy Gobert's defense against Anthony Davis. He's more would be good. It's a bad team for the example, but like somebody that takes the ball to the rack a lot as a guard, like those guys are the guys that I wouldn't want.
Trae Young.
Like Kyrie's not in a great spot against Utah because he's going to be taking the ball to the hoop and Rudy Gobert is going to be swallowing that shit up.
Yeah, that's fair. And we are locked now. So hopefully you guys got your lineups in. Somebody in the chat asking, isn't Bojanovic out? I don't know if that's about the Turkish people in the chat, which I don't think there's a crossover there, but Bojan is out. Bogdan is in. So we have one Bogdanovic still.
Bogdan has a bug up his butt.
Yeah, he probably wants out. As he kind of should want out, honestly. He would be really good if he got usage somewhere. Put him in Memphis.
I'll do that to him, man.
Sean Tierney asking Daddy Likes. Can we get a Daddy Likes? Actually, a couple requests for Daddy Likes. Yeah, you know what? Why not?
Daddy likes the sushi rolls that are waiting for him.
Oh, all right, fine.
I mean,
here
we can do an abbreviated version.
I'll do Daddy Likes for the guys that come up immediately in the lineups I have in the big jam, and we'll see if any of them are interesting because I don't even know if I have anybody early. Karl-Anthony Towns, 29%. Daddy likes that quite a bit.
29. This is DK, right?
Yeah, DK.
Towns is 29%.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on, I'm just getting to the DK data. I haven't really been looking at anything DK today, so
that's fair.
That's a lot. Given that number, I'm really curious to see what Nikola Jokic is owned at.
I would guess a little bit more. I think people might have just gone down from Towns to Jokic.
You said 28, right?
29.
Isn't that higher than what we had projected? I mean, for 10-8, like that's a lot of salary. That's a lot of ownership for the most expensive guy on the slate.
Yeah, we had him at 19%, so that's a pretty decent chunk over. But
I mean, look, he's still Karl-Anthony Towns. Like 28% is not a lot. He's not 70% owned. You're not fading that sort of chalk, but it makes me curious about how much more Jokic is owned because I would prefer. I think I prefer Jokic if I had to guess.
Oh, in one of my big jam lineups, Travion Graham, 3.6%. So if we are going to the Travion Graham pay window, today is the day.
You could have it.
I hope so.
You could have it.
Fred VanVleet, 17.6%.
Really?
Yeah. Like he had that big opener. A lot of shots, man. A lot of shot attempts.
That feels really high.
PJ Washington 6.5%.
That's too high.
I'm intrigued by PJ. PJ's kind of a beast.
Sure.
I mean, also as she's saying, Daddy likes her Uncle Spags likes fit. We don't want to steal the Daddy thing. Siakam 20%.
Uncle Chubbs.
Uncle Chubbs. How does Uncle Chubbs feel about Siakam at 20?
I would love to have more than that.
Yeah, I think actually I did get more than that, so I feel all right about that. All right, those feel like the main ones. I don't think there's anybody that. I'm sure there's like a Marvin Williams or some shit, but it's not coming up for me.
I'm feeling good today.
I want you to have your sushi rolls.
So do I. I'm hungry.
All right, guys, hit that like button before you go. Tune in all weekend long. It's going to be the reunion of Fast Eddie Fear and EMAC on the Live Before Lock shows of NBA this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun with those two guys. They know each other really well. Work together on the old Fan Vice show, so I think that's going to be a fun mix. And I think on Monday, I'm back with Eddie, if I'm recalling correctly, or am I with you? I don't know.
You, me.
Okay, me and you on Monday. All right, so I'm back with you on Monday. So tune in then, but watch all weekend long because we have content coming up. Check out On the Contrary. This week was me and the founder of airyards.com, Josh Hermsmeyer, is one of the smarter guys out there. Really enjoyed that show because I'm an Air Yards mark, Josh, as you know.
You are.
Yeah.
You have to towel off after that show today?
They never meet your heroes, they say, but I think if it's over Skype or over Zoom, I think it all goes perfectly. It was nice having him there. I think I fanboyed out like a little bit more than I normally would, just because like I was like, man, I love your site, like, and I made a joke that he makes on Twitter, but it's just like I'm such a cornball sometimes with that. Like I've met famous people. I was at Rick Springfield's house this week. I mentioned to Eddie yesterday, and like who's a famous '80s musician. Really don't get any sort of starstruck thing. There are actual musicians there. Don't even care. I talked to the Air Yards guy at a show, and I'm like, man, like Air Yards is great. so that's me. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Enjoy your weekends, and good luck tonight. We'll see you again soon.
Later, everybody.